Chapter 24. Outside the death arena, Chien had a smile on her face as she muttered to herself, "Little junior brother, senior sister believes in you. You will definitely survive." After exchanging Xiaochen for 500 low-grade spirit stones, Chien went straight to the largest casino in the city. Xiaochen did not expect that Chien would sell him out. With an angry shout, Xiaochen calmed down. At this point, it was obviously impossible for him to run away. The death arena was backed by the Leshan prefecture. Since he had already paid, they would definitely not let him leave. It was useless even if he was a disciple of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. After all, they did not force him. It was his own senior sister who sold him out. Seeing that Xiaochen had calmed down so quickly, the one-eyed man was also a little surprised. He thought that although this kid was young, his temperament was not bad. He was able to accept everything in such a short time. Not bad. He secretly praised Xiaochen, but this kind of praise could not change anything. Everything still had to be done according to the agreement. He had already signed an agreement with Chien. At this time, the one-eyed man also truthfully told Xiaochen the contents of the agreement. "This is the agreement that your senior sister signed for you. You only need to remember 3 things. First, the death arena will buy you for half a year. Within half a year, you must unconditionally participate in all the battles arranged for you by the death arena. Second, your battle frequency is once every 2 days. Third, because your senior sister said that you are a genius, your rating is S-class. That is to say, in every battle, your opponent will be at least 1 level higher than you. There is no upper limit. For every warrior, the death arena would give them a rating, starting from C-class, followed by C, B, A, and S. C-class was the weakest, which also meant that his C-class warrior would not meet someone with a higher cultivation level than him. As for B and A classes, they might meet someone with a higher cultivation level than them, but they would not meet them in every battle. Moreover, the opponent's cultivation level could only be 1 level higher. As for the strongest S-class, it was just like what was said earlier. The opponent in every battle had to be at least 1 level higher than you, and there was no upper limit. In other words, you might encounter an opponent 1 level higher than you, or 2 levels higher than you, or even 3 levels higher than you. It was not impossible for it to be 3 levels higher than you. S-class? Hearing the one-eyed man's words, Xiaochen's anger exploded again. Chien, this bitch, not only sold me, but also... He was very clear why this bitch wanted him to become an S-class warrior. It was completely because he could sell it for a few more spirit stones. Devil, she was simply a devil. He was her little junior brother, and she actually did such a heartless thing. Every other day, he would have to face a battle of life and death, and the opponent would be at least 1 level higher than him. In his heart, he wanted to skin this bitch alive, but it was obviously unrealistic. Now, he should think about how to survive for the next 6 months. They arranged a place for Xiaochen to stay. It was a sealed stone room. Although it was simple, it had everything he needed. Furthermore, if Xiaochen had any requests, he could tell the guards. As long as the requests were not too excessive, they would usually be satisfied. Of course, that was with the exception of leaving the arena. Sitting cross-legged on a cushion in the stone room, Xiaochen wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Was this the so-called experience? This was completely forcing him to the road of death. One must know that in the death arena, victory and defeat could only be determined by life and death. There was no such thing as stopping at a certain point. It was either you die or I die. After a silent night, Xiaochen ushered in his first death arena the next day. Inside the huge circular palace, there was a huge deathmatch arena in the center. It was surrounded by hard and tall walls that were tens of meters tall. On top of the high walls, there were densely packed seats for the guests who came to watch the battle. The first death arena was between Xiaochen and a warrior at the profound Yellow Realm. Before it started, the auditorium was already full of people. At the same time, the betting about this battle had been opened. The odds for Xiaochen were 1 to 2. While people were placing their bets, In the center of the death arena, a burly man, who should be the host, was working hard to exaggerate the atmosphere of the death arena. Under this man's exaggeration, the atmosphere gradually became more and more intense. At the same time, the two sides were finally about to enter the arena. Next, let me grandly introduce the two superiors of this battle. The first one to enter is the Black Tower, who has won 3 battles in a row and is known as the Iron Hand Invincible. With a loud voice, he introduced the two superiors of the death arena to the audience. Along with this man's voice, a muscular man, who was more than 2 meters tall, walked out of the stone door on the left. This man's cultivation was at the profound yellow realm. His skin was extremely dark, and his eyes unconsciously emitted a faint murderous intent. With Black Tower's entrance, a burst of cheers resounded. Then, the host turned his eyes to the stone door on the right and said, "The next one to enter the arena is the newly nominated S-level warrior of the death arena, the elite outer disciple of the East Sword Pavilion, Xiao Chen." Without any fear of Xiao Chen's identity, he directly announced the name of the East Sword Pavilion. Hearing that he was a disciple of the East Sword Pavilion, the audience became even more excited. Rarely did disciples of the suzerain participate in the death arena. Therefore, every time a disciple of the suzerain participated, everyone was very excited. After all, the combat power of the disciples of the suzerain was much stronger than that of the individual practitioners. In the thunderous cheers, Xiao Chen calmly walked out of the stone door. He was 1.8 meters tall, and his body was a little thin. In front of Black Tower, it was obvious that he was much shorter. Looking at Black Tower in front of him, Xiao Chen knew that he was his first opponent. Instead of saying anything, Black Tower laughed disdainfully. "How dare a little kid like you participate in the death arena? Are you here to die? It just so happens that I have never killed a disciple of the suzerain, especially a disciple of a giant like the East Sword Pavilion." Black Tower provoked indifferently. Hearing this, Xiao Chen did not answer. After the staff left, Xiao Chen's storage ring flashed, and the Qingyun sword directly appeared in his hand. With the dark weapon in hand, Xiao Chen's aura immediately became fierce. Seeing that the two of them were about to fight, the audience kept shouting loudly. The atmosphere of the scene directly reached its peak. The battle was about to begin. In a private room on the 3rd floor of the death arena, the one-eyed man who had signed the agreement with Qi Yan yesterday was standing respectfully behind a beautiful young lady. The beautiful young lady had a charming smile on her face as she spoke. "You said that this kid was sold by that hag?" "Yes, it is indeed Miss Qi Yan. That hag is really ruthless. I heard that this kid is her junior brother, and also the new disciple of Senior Tsang Xian. Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 25. The one-eyed man behind her was dumbfounded. He only knew that Xiao Chen was an outer sect disciple of the East Sword Pavilion, but he didn't know that he was also a disciple of Tsang Xian. Who was Tsang Xian? He was one of the top 3 experts of the East Sword Pavilion. If Xiao Chen was just an ordinary outer sect disciple of the East Sword Pavilion, then even if he died in the deathmatch arena, the Leshan Prefecture would have ways to deal with it. After all, the East Sword Pavilion definitely wouldn't fight to the death with the Leshan Prefecture for an ordinary disciple. They only needed to give some compensation. But Xiao Chen was different. He was a disciple of Tsang Xian. If he died in the deathmatch arena, it wouldn't be a matter that could be settled with some compensation. He said to the girl with an ugly expression, "Miss, do you think we should?" The one-eyed man asked cautiously. His meaning was very clear. Since Xiao Chen was a disciple of Tsang Xian, then shouldn't they give him some preferential treatment? At the very least, they should ensure his safety. Or should they just let him go? The young lady let out a charming smile. Just make sure that he doesn't die. As for the rest, there's no need to change anything. Everything will go according to the normal procedure. Let him fight when he needs to. That bitch actually treated my place as her junior brother's training ground. But this time, you owe me another favor. How are you going to repay me the next time we meet, Qi Yan? Having seen through Qi Yan's intention, the girl smiled. As soon as she finished speaking, the girl got up and left the private room, no longer paying attention to Xiao Chen's battle. He respectfully watched the girl leave. The girl's name was Lin Wanner, and she was the daughter of the Leshan Prefecture's master. Her status in the prefecture was extremely high. After watching Lin Wanner leave, the one-eyed man continued to look at Xiao Chen. At the same time, the battle between Xiao Chen and Heita had already begun. It had to be said that Heita's battle strength wasn't weak. At a glance, one could tell that he had experienced countless battles and was far from being comparable to those young masters who grew up in a greenhouse. He had extremely rich battle experience. His speed wasn't fast, but his strength was astonishing. In a head-on clash, Xiao Chen's strength was far inferior to his. After several head-on clashes, Xiao Chen was always at a disadvantage. The Black Tower cleverly grasped this opportunity and didn't give Xiao Chen any time to catch his breath. They wanted to end the battle quickly. He was simply a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus, with a body of copper skin and iron bones. Who would have thought that in his first battle, he would actually arrange such a strong opponent for himself? Xiao Chen didn't dare to meet Black Tower head-on. Relying on his advantage in movement, he constantly avoided Black Tower's attacks. After a series of fierce attacks, Black Tower was still unable to touch the corner of Xiao Chen's clothes. Black Tower was furious, and as he strengthened his attacks, he shouted coldly, "Brat, do you only know how to dodge?" The Black Tower Council was indeed angry. Looking at Xiao Chen, who was constantly dodging, the surrounding audience also burst into boos. Some people even cursed. "What is this? Playing hide-and-seek? Brat, can you do it or not? If you can't, just kill yourself." The people who came to the death arena were naturally here for the excitement. They wanted to see the kind of fierce battle where fists met flesh. However, the current battle situation was completely different from what they had imagined. Xiao Chen was only dodging and didn't come into contact with Black Tower at all. Xiao Chen didn't pay attention to the angry curses of the audience. After dodging for a while, finally, he found a flaw in Black Tower's attack. Because of anger, Black Tower completely abandoned his defense and fiercely punched out. Seeing this, a fierce look flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. Then, the long sword in his hand suddenly pierced out. Sword chi burst out, and the sword directly pierced Black Tower's heart. A one-hit kill, not giving Black Tower the slightest chance. Xiao Chen pulled out the sword and sheathed it, and Black Tower's body fell back with a loud bang. Xiao Chen won this battle. Black Tower, who had been suppressing Xiao Chen, was killed by Xiao Chen in the blink of an eye. Seeing this result, the audience burst into a burst of exclamations. What was this? Black Tower, who originally had the upper hand, died just like that. Everything ended too quickly, but that was the end. Xiao Chen left the deathmatch arena expressionlessly. In the first deathmatch, Xiao Chen had won impeccably. He had perfectly utilized the advantage of his body movement and defeated Heita without sustaining any injuries. Xiao Chen directly returned to his stone house. Next, he could rest for a day before the second battle. Xiao Chen had been completely sold out by Qi Yan, and he could only accept this fact. In the following time, Xiao Chen carried out the death battles arranged for him in the death arena, and worked hard to improve his cultivation and battle strength. First, it was cultivation. Every night, Xiao Chen would cultivate step by step. During the day, when he had nothing to do, Xiao Chen would begin to comprehend the 100 upper-grade martial arts techniques that Zhang Xian had given him. According to Zhang Xian, if he was able to comprehend all 100 upper-grade martial skills, his understanding of the way of the sword would improve by leaps and bounds. For a sword cultivator, cultivation was important, but the understanding of the sword principle could not be ignored. The deeper one's understanding of the sword principle, the stronger one's battle strength would be. Upper-grade martial arts techniques were not difficult for Xiao Chen. Basically, he could learn a set of upper-grade martial arts techniques every 3 days, but to completely comprehend them was not something that could be done in a short period of time. After a period of exploration, Xiao Chen also discovered that the entry level was not useful to him. Only by cultivating each upper-grade martial arts technique to the perfection stage could he improve his strength. If other people knew that Xiaochen wanted to cultivate all 100 upper-grade martial arts techniques to the perfection stage, they would definitely say that he was crazy. It was extremely difficult for others to cultivate a single upper-grade martial arts technique to the perfection of martial arts, but Xiaochen wanted to cultivate 100 upper-grade martial arts techniques to the perfection of martial arts. What else could he be but a lunatic? However, such a crazy idea in the eyes of others was put into action by Xiaochen. Xiaochen did not cultivate as casually as before. He began to study the upper-grade martial arts techniques one by one. Before he cultivated the upper-grade martial arts technique to the perfection stage, he would not cultivate the second one. Xiaochen's requirement for each upper-grade martial arts technique was to reach the perfection stage. As a result, the speed of cultivation was naturally much slower. It was very difficult to reach the perfection stage, but Xiaochen did not give up. After 3 months, Xiaochen cultivated the first upper-grade martial arts technique to the perfection stage. As such, in addition to the sword Shadow Strike, Xiaochen already had 2 upper-grade martial arts techniques that had reached the perfection stage. Don't think that cultivating an upper-grade martial arts technique to the perfection stage in 3 months was slow. In fact, this was already a heaven-defying speed. In the entire East Sword Pavilion, the only person who could cultivate a martial arts technique to the perfection stage in 3 months was probably Xiaochen. With a good start, Xiaochen began to cultivate the third upper-grade martial arts technique. At the same time, time passed day by day. Xiaochen was also constantly sharpening and improving through battles and cultivation. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 26. The days in the gladiator arena were boring, but time passed quickly. Half a year had passed unknowingly, and today was Xiaochen's last battle in the gladiator arena. As long as he survived this battle, Xiaochen could leave the gladiator arena. After half a year of training in countless life-and-death battles, Xiaochen had changed a lot. Perhaps Xiaochen himself did not notice these changes. First of all, his combat awareness had been greatly improved. Secondly, his attacks were ruthless and decisive. Lastly, his temperament had become more mature. If Xiaochen was still a little immature half a year ago, then after half a year, the last bit of immaturity had been completely wiped out by the countless life-and-death battles. Compared with the above 3 improvements, Xiaochen's improvement in strength was not worth mentioning. After half a year in the gladiator arena, his cultivation had improved from the initial yellow realm to the profound yellow realm. He came to the gladiator arena as usual. His last opponent was a warrior at the completion of the yellow realm, whose cultivation was 2 realms higher than Xiaochen's. It was not easy for an ordinary person to kill an opponent who was 2 realms higher than him. Xiaochen had no way out. He could either kill his opponent or die here. The middle-aged man was called Ghost Shadow. He was already a famous warrior in the gladiator arena. After hundreds of life-and-death battles, he was still alive, which was enough to prove his strength. Even so, Ghost Shadow still dared not to be careless when facing Xiaochen. In half a year, Xiaochen had become famous. Of course, Xiaochen had achieved this with his own strength. Standing opposite to him, Ghost Shadow was also a swordsman. He stared at Xiaochen. When the host announced the start of the gladiator arena, Ghost Shadow immediately attacked. He unsheathed his blood sword, and a bloody light flashed, cutting toward Xiaochen's neck like lightning. Xiaochen was able to tell that the Ghost Shadow was very powerful just from the first move alone. None of his previous opponents could compare with him. Without being careless, Xiaochen unsheathed his blue cloud sword to meet Ghost Shadow's sword. The 2 swords collided and then disappeared at the same time. The first attack was perfectly blocked by Xiaochen. Ghost Shadow did not change his expression at all. He moved his feet and rushed toward Xiaochen. Facing Ghost Shadow's attack, Xiaochen would not retreat. He also held his sword and the 2 swordsmen immediately fought fiercely. Every sword move could be said to be extremely dangerous. Moreover, their understanding of the Tao of the sword was the same. After hundreds of moves, neither of them had the upper hand. Looking at the intense battle in the fighting arena, the surrounding spectators continuously cheered. Exciting, this battle was really too exciting. In a private room on the third floor, Wan Er personally came to watch Xiao Chen's last battle. Looking at Xiao Chen fighting Ghost Shadow, Wan Er said expressionlessly. In half a year, he has already grown to the point where he can compete with Ghost Shadow. In this half a year, Wan Er had seen Xiao Chen's growth. In such a short time, Xiao Chen could already compete with Ghost Shadow without losing. Even Wan Er had never seen this kind of growth speed. In the entire Leshan prefecture, there was no one who could compare to Xiao Chen. Hearing Wan Er's words, the one-eyed man standing behind her said softly, "Miss, do you think Xiao Chen will be a match for Ghost Shadow? Ghost Shadow has been immersed in the Tao of the Sword for decades, and Xiao Chen is only 18 years old this year. In terms of Tao of the Sword, I'm afraid Xiao Chen won't be able to catch up with Ghost Shadow. Both of them were equal in strength and were also sword cultivators. In this case, the next competition would be in terms of Tao of the Sword." In this regard, the one-eyed man was not optimistic about Xiao Chen. After all, the age difference between Xiao Chen and Ghost Shadow was too big. When Ghost Shadow stepped onto the path of martial arts, Xiao Chen was probably not even born yet. The one-eyed man's words were meant to ask if they should save Xiao Chen at the critical moment. But hearing his words, Wan Er smiled and said, "You have the cultivation of the celestial realm. Take a closer look at the two of them and see who has a deeper understanding of the Tao of the Sword." Under Wan Er's reminder, the one-eyed man stared at the two people in the fierce battle. After a while, his expression finally changed. In terms of Tao of the Sword, Xiao Chen actually had the upper hand. A young man who was only 18 years old actually had a better understanding of the Tao of the Sword than Ghost Shadow. How was this possible? He was somewhat surprised at how Xiao Chen cultivated. Even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, it was impossible for him to defeat Ghost Shadow. While the one-eyed man was still in shock, the battle was about to come to an end. Xiao Chen gradually gained the upper hand due to his advantage in understanding the way of the sword. Eventually, he seized an opportunity and pierced the Ghost Shadow's throat with his sword. He lost. He lost to an 18-year-old young man. Until his death, Ghost Shadow could not believe that he was actually defeated by Xiao Chen. Without much of a change in expression, Xiao Chen killed Ghost Shadow. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, Xiao Chen slowly walked out of the arena. At the same time, in the private room on the third floor, Wan Er also stood up slowly and smiled at the one-eyed man. "Let's go and see this kid for the last time." After successfully defeating Ghost Shadow, Xiao Chen had also stayed in the arena for half a year. Today, he could finally leave. At the last moment, Wan Er finally wanted to meet this young genius of the East Sword Pavilion. He had never seen Lin Waner before. After returning to his stone room, he looked around the room that he had lived in for half a year. The corners of his mouth unconsciously curled into a faint smile. "Bitch, you didn't think that this young master would make it through, right? Just you wait. You'll see what happens in the future." Only Xiao Chen himself knew how he had spent the past half a year. Although he had improved a lot, Xiao Chen had also put in a lot of sweat and had brushed shoulders with death countless times. It's finally time to leave. As soon as Xiao Chen's voice fell, the one-eyed man opened the door and walked in. When he saw Xiao Chen, he smiled kindly and said, "Congratulations, Xiao Chen. Congratulations, little friend. The half-year period is up. You can leave any time and our deathmatch arena will no longer arrange any battles for you. The time is up." Hearing the one-eyed man's words, Xiao Chen nodded slightly. Seeing this, the one-eyed man continued. "But before you leave, my family's miss hopes to meet you. You can rest assured that my family's miss has no ill intentions." Wan Er intended to meet Xiao Chen. Hearing the one-eyed man's words, Xiao Chen did not refuse. Under the one-eyed man's lead, they quickly arrived at Wan Er's room. The one-eyed man did not follow Xiao Chen into the room. After bringing Xiao Chen to the door, the one-eyed man gestured for Xiao Chen to enter alone. As for himself, he respectfully guarded the door with no intention of entering. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 27. He had already guessed that Lin Wanner was from the Leshan Prefecture. After all, the death arena was controlled by the Leshan Prefecture. In the room, Xiaochen and Lin Wanner sat opposite each other. Facing the charming woman in front of him, Xiaochen's eyes were very clean, without the slightest evil thoughts. Lin Wanner smiled and took the lead to speak. Not bad, no wonder Qian praised you so much. Lin Wanner had already met Qian before, and they had known each other for a long time. One was the daughter of the Leshan Prefecture's master, while the other was a disciple of the East Sword Pavilion's Tsang Qian. The two women naturally interacted a lot, and over time, they became friends. Hearing Lin Wanner mention Qian, Xiaochen smiled bitterly and shook his head. This bitch still praised him so much. Bullshit, she almost killed him. Knowing that Xiaochen must be unhappy with Qian, Lin Wanner did not mention it anymore. After a few casual words, Lin Wanner handed Xiaochen a letter, saying that Qian had left it for him. After half a year, she would give it to Xiaochen. After receiving the letter, Xiaochen opened it on the spot. It was very simple, with only one sentence. After reading the contents of the letter, Xiaochen was so angry that he tore the letter to shreds in front of Lin Wanner. Junior brother, you did well. Senior sister is very satisfied. Originally, I wanted to wait for you, but senior sister has something to do, so I left first. Oh, by the way, senior sister has also brought senior sister Green Feather Eagle with her. You have to find a way to return to the East Sword Pavilion. Don't miss the year-end examination, otherwise, it will be very troublesome. That stinky woman actually left him in the Xanadu and took the Green Feather Eagle with her. It would only take 3 days to return to the East Sword Pavilion on the Green Feather Eagle, but without the Green Feather Eagle, it would take at least a month on foot, and that was if he rushed at full speed. If there were any delays along the way, who knew how long it would take? Xiaochen's heart was filled with hatred. He had long known that nothing good would come out of training with her, but he still hadn't expected that she would be so ruthless. Of course, what Xiaochen hadn't expected was yet to come, and what was even more ruthless had yet to come. Xiaochen came out of the deathmatch arena with a gloomy face. Looking at Xiaochen's expression, Wanner knew that Qian must have done something again. After being left behind, Xiaochen gradually calmed down. However, as soon as he left the death arena, he was immediately surrounded by dozens of strong men. The cultivation of these strong men was not high. Some of them were only in the channel opening realm, while the highest was in the yellow realm. Blocking Xiaochen's path, the leader asked, "Are you Qian's younger brother, Xiaochen?" Hearing this person's question, Xiaochen instinctively felt that there was something wrong. As expected, after hearing the next sentence, Xiaochen directly exploded. "This is the gambling debt that your sister owes in our casino. It's a total of 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones. She told us to come and find you. Now, pay up." He took out an IOU and showed it to Xiaochen. Following this, the surrounding dozens of people quickly took out their own IOUs. Qian had actually written IOUs in 38 casinos, and the person who had to pay up on these IOUs was actually himself. After some calculation, Qian owed a total of 89,000 low-grade spiritual stones. With this amount of spiritual stones, not to mention Xiaochen, even a deacon of the East Sword Pavilion might not be able to pay it back. Xiaochen looked at the dozens of brawny men in front of him, feeling like crying. Seeing that Xiaochen had no intention of taking out the money after a long time, the leader's face darkened. "What? It's written in black and white. Do you want to deny it? Let me tell you, if you don't pay up today, don't even think about leaving. Pay it back? I'll pay you back your ass. Where do I have 98,000 low-grade spiritual stones? This be *TCH, I knew it wouldn't be so simple." With a calm face, Xiaochen looked at the dozens of people surrounding him and said indifferently, "Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. I don't have money, and these IOUs don't have my handprint. I won't admit it. So, go and find whoever owes me the money." After saying that, Xiaochen stepped forward. Seeing that Xiaochen was about to leave, the leader immediately shouted angrily, Boy, you're courting death. Beat, these people were all from the casino. Although they had some cultivation, they were generally a bunch of dabblers, unlike the sect disciples who had undergone systematic training. Facing the siege of dozens of people, Xiao Chen's heart was filled with anger. Being cheated by this B*TCH again and again, even a bodhisattva would be angry. Without holding back, Xiao Chen directly beat them up. After a quarter of an hour, these dozens of people were all beaten to the ground by Xiao Chen, crying out in pain. Looking down at the leader, Xiao Chen said indifferently, "I'll say it again. These debts have nothing to do with me. Go and find whoever owes me the money. If you bother me again, the consequences won't be so simple." After saying that, Xiao Chen walked away, leaving behind the gloomy faces of the people behind him. Until Xiao Chen completely disappeared into the crowd, the leader stood up shakily and said, "How dare you offend our Blood Wolf gang? Boy, just you wait, behind these casinos, there was naturally a force taking care of them, and this force was the Blood Wolf gang." Although it couldn't be compared to a sect like the East Sword Pavilion, the Blood Wolf gang was still considered a local gang in Shangri-La. Its leader was a mysterious Ian stage warrior. Not taking this matter to heart, Xiao Chen found an inn and prepared to have a good night's rest. Early the next morning, he would set off for the East Sword Pavilion. After a silent night, early the next morning, Xiao Chen left Shangri-La alone. Towards this place where he had stayed for half a year, Xiao Chen didn't have the slightest bit of nostalgia. And all of this was because of Qian. After leaving the city, without a mount, Xiao Chen was helpless. It seemed that he could only walk back to the East Sword Pavilion. After walking for about 20 to 30 miles, a group of people suddenly blocked his path. There were about 50 to 60 people in total, and the leader was a mysterious Ian stage warrior. Xiao Chen stopped when he saw the group of people. The leader of the group said coldly, "Don't worry. Boy, it's only right to pay back what you owe. Either you pay up today, or next year. Today will be your death anniversary." The group of people was the Blood Wolf gang. The leader was the Blood Wolf gang's leader, Chen Meng, who was at the mysterious Ian stage. Hearing Chen Meng's words, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change. But in his heart, he cursed Qian angrily. "Bitch, you won't feel good if you don't kill me, right? We just came out from the deathmatch arena and you already provoked the Blood Wolf gang. Just you wait." All of this was caused by Qian. Cursing silently, Xiao Chen didn't hesitate. In a flash, his figure rushed to the right. What a joke, the Blood Wolf gang had 50 to 60 people, and the leader was even a mysterious Ian stage warrior. Even if he could fight, he couldn't possibly be a match for them. So, without any hesitation, Xiao Chen chose to run away. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 28. They had no intention of fighting with the Blood Wolf gang. What a joke! This time, they were the elites of the Blood Wolf gang. Apart from the gang leader, Chen Meng, there were 8 other warriors of the mysterious Ian realm. As for the rest, they were all in the Yellow realm. There were 70 to 80 people in total, and none of them were lower than the Yellow realm. There was no chance of winning. Therefore, Xiao Chen chose to run away at once. He did not expect Xiao Chen to run away without saying anything. Seeing this, Chen Meng's face darkened and he shouted angrily, "Go after him." Naturally, it was impossible to let Xiao Chen escape. Following Chen Meng's voice, the Blood Wolf gang chased after Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen was indeed a little sad to have provoked the Blood Wolf gang with his profound Yellow Realm cultivation. The gap between the two sides was too big, and he did not have the ability to fight back. Facing the Blood Wolf gang's pursuit, Xiao Chen did not hesitate and directly rushed into the forest. It was difficult to escape the Blood Wolf gang's pursuit on the official road. After all, there were 9 warriors of the mysterious Ian realm. Only by entering the forest and using the dense forest as a cover could he possibly escape. After running all the way through a small forest, Xiao Chen finally saw a continuous mountain range. He remembered that this mountain range was called the Demon's Mountains. The area was extremely vast, and at the same time, evil beasts ran rampant. It was a world of evil beasts, and it was very dangerous for humans to enter. It was even said that there were level 5 and level 6 evil beasts in the Demon's Mountains. Level 5 and level 6 evil beasts were superior evil beasts that surpassed the celestial realm. Xiaochen hesitated, but when he turned his head and saw the Blood Wolf gang who were still chasing after him, he focused his eyes and rushed directly into the Demon's Mountains. Seeing Xiaochen rush into the Demon's Mountains, the Blood Wolf gang did not follow. Master Chen Meng waved his hand and said, "Surround this place. As soon as this guy comes out, kill him on the spot." The Blood Wolf gang did not enter the Wanyao mountain range. They just sealed off all the exits. Xiaochen didn't rush into the depths of the Thousands Demon Mountain range. Instead, he paid close attention to the movements of the Blood Wolf gang from the periphery. After discovering that they had actually sealed off all the exits, Xiaochen felt helpless. These fellows didn't dare to enter the Myriad Demon Mountain range, and they were certain that he wouldn't go too deep into the mountain range, so they sealed the exit and waited for him to walk right into their trap. As a result, he only had two choices left. The other option was to go out and fight with the Blood Wolf gang. However, this was obviously not realistic. The difference in strength between the two sides was too big. This way, they could only brace themselves and cross the Thousand Demon Mountain range. Although it was also full of danger, but compared to facing the Blood Wolf gang, it seemed that there was a glimmer of hope. Both paths could be said to be full of danger. After hesitating for a long time, Xiaochen finally cursed. "Qian, just you wait." After saying that, he turned around and walked into the depths of the Thousand Demon Mountain range. There was no other choice. Crossing the Thousand Demon Mountain range, if he was careful, there was still a glimmer of hope. As long as he didn't encounter any powerful monsters, he still had a chance. He chose to cross the Thousand Demon Mountain range. At the same time, outside the mountain range, the leader of the Blood Wolf gang and the other 8 mysterious origin stage warriors gathered together and whispered. "That demoness is really ruthless. She actually forced her own junior brother into the Thousand Demon Mountain range." "That's right," everyone whispered. However, Xiaochen didn't know that everything that the Blood Wolf gang did was actually under Qian's orders. Under Qian's threat, the Blood Wolf gang had no choice but to put on such a show in order to force Xiaochen into the Thousand Demon Mountain range. The purpose of doing this was naturally to train Xiaochen. If Xiaochen could really cross the Thousand Demon Mountain range alive, then his strength would be greatly improved. After all, life and death experiences were the best way for a person to grow. Xiaochen didn't know that all this was planned by the demoness Qian. As he gradually went deeper into the Thousand Demon Mountain range, Xiaochen was 120% alert. The Thousand Demon Mountain range was no joke. It was the world of monsters, and there were many monsters. If a human entered this place, even a master of the celestial realm would be in danger of dying, let alone a young boy of the yellow realm. Xiaochen didn't dare to be careless. Just as he was carefully moving forward, suddenly, an extremely dangerous breath attacked him. Without any hesitation, Xiaochen instinctively dodged to the side. Then, he saw a black shadow flashing by where he was just a moment ago. Fortunately, he discovered it in time. Otherwise, the blow just now would be enough to seriously injure him. And being seriously injured in the Thousand Demon Mountain range was not good news. Not to mention the injury, just the smell of blood from the wound alone was enough to attract many monsters. He turned his head to look at the black shadow. It was a 1-meter-tall monkey with blood-red hair all over its body. Its eyes were shining with a faint red light. "Bloodfire monkey," he whispered softly. He didn't expect to encounter a Bloodfire monkey here. This Bloodfire monkey was only a Class 1 monster, which was equivalent to a human warrior of the Yellow Realm. Its strength wasn't very strong. However, Bloodfire monkeys were social monsters. Under normal circumstances, they would appear in a group. They rarely acted alone. Encountering a Bloodfire monkey as soon as he arrived, Xiaochen couldn't help but have the urge to cry. Xiaochen didn't want to provoke this Bloodfire monkey. However, it obviously didn't want to let Xiaochen go. With a roar, the Bloodfire monkey fiercely attacked Xiaochen. Seeing this, Xiaochen directly took out the Qingyun sword and fiercely stabbed out. He directly used the sword Shadow Kill. He attacked with all his strength. He couldn't be entangled with this monkey. Otherwise, once the group of monkeys arrived, it would be difficult for him to escape. The sword light that filled the sky crazily attacked the Bloodfire monkey. With one strike, Xiaochen successfully killed the Bloodfire monkey. Without hesitation, just as Xiaochen was about to quickly leave, a roar came from all directions. It was too late. He was still a step too late. The group of monkeys had arrived. Moreover, looking at their posture, he was afraid that they had already surrounded him. As expected, soon, hundreds of Bloodfire monkeys continuously surrounded Xiaochen from all directions. Looking at the hundreds of Bloodfire monkeys in front of him, Xiaochen wanted to cry but had no tears. Facing such a large number of Bloodfire monkeys, even a warrior of the mysterious Yuan realm would have a hard time. Sensing the scarlet eyes of the monkeys, Xiaochen helplessly shook his head. Then, he tightened his grip on the Qingyun sword. His expression gradually calmed down. He glanced at the group of monkeys and said indifferently, "I originally wanted to pass through the Demon's Mountain safely, but now it seems that I can't. Since that's the case, then come at me." There was no way to retreat. Xiaochen's heart was filled with a soaring desire to fight. Even though the chances of winning were small, it was impossible for him to surrender without putting up a fight. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 29. It could be said that Xiaochen had been forced into a desperate situation. At this moment, however, he calmed down instead. Surrounded by sword qi, Xiaochen pointed the tip of his sword at the group of monkeys. He shouted in a low voice, "Let's fight." As if they had understood Xiaochen's words, the group of monkeys suddenly burst out with an earth-shaking roar. Then, hundreds of Bloodfire monkeys fiercely attacked Xiaochen. One man against hundreds of monkeys. Moreover, Xiaochen's cultivation was only at the profound yellow realm. One could imagine how great the pressure would be. Even so, Xiaochen's eyes did not show the slightest trace of fear. On the contrary, the look in his eyes became incomparably firm at this moment. At the age of 15, Xiaochen went out alone to experience the world. Then, he joined the East Sword Pavilion. He was not a person who had talent for nothing. He had always believed that if he wanted to become a strong person, he had to go through endless trials and tribulations to succeed. Who was born to be a strong person who stood proudly in the firmament? No. Only by relying on oneself step by step could one stand at the top of the world. The long sword in his hand was constantly waving. Sword Shadow Kill, sword technique of 5 mountains, sword technique of breeze, sword technique of scorching fire. In the past 6 months, Xiaochen had also practiced 4 upper-class martial arts techniques to the realm of completion. His combat power was far from what it was 6 months ago. And this was all thanks to Qian. If Qian had not sold Xiaochen to the death fighting arena, Xiaochen would not have made such great progress in 6 months. Only when one's life was hanging by a thread could one's true potential burst out. And Qian's method of training for Xiaochen was like this. She put Xiaochen in a life and death crisis. If he wanted to survive, he had to break through his own limits. After a fierce battle, Xiaochen was already covered with wounds. At the same time, the group of monkeys also retreated. A total of 18 Bloodfire monkeys died under Xiaochen's sword. After killing 18 Bloodfire monkeys, Xiaochen's body was dripping with blood. The sound of dripping blood was extremely ear-piercing. His eyes were calm and resolute as he looked at the slowly retreating monkeys. However, at this moment, a 2-meter-tall monkey walked out from the group of monkeys. Facing this monkey, the other monkeys all made way for it. Moreover, they were all extremely respectful. The monkeys that were already retreating stopped when they saw the Bloodfire monkey. Noticing this, Xiaochen frowned. At the same time, an indifferent voice sounded from a tree behind Xiaochen. "It's the Monkey King, the king of the Bloodflame monkeys. If we want to beat them back, we have to kill it." There was a hint of playfulness in the voice. He didn't expect there to be someone here. Hearing this, Xiaochen turned around and saw a young man in black sitting on a tree trunk with a playful face. He was looking at him with a smile. Xiaochen didn't even notice this person's existence. He looked young and should be about the same age as himself. Following Xiaochen's gaze, the young man jumped and landed steadily beside Xiaochen. He looked at Xiaochen with a faint smile. Not bad. You can hold on for so long after reaching the Yellow Realm's level, but it's not enough to beat the monkeys back. How about this? I'll hold the monkeys back for you, and you can kill the Monkey King. Can you do it? The young man took the initiative to help Xiaochen. In fact, he had been standing aside since the beginning. He didn't want to help Xiaochen, but after seeing Xiaochen fight with the Blood Flame monkeys, the young man realized that Xiaochen was not an ordinary person. His talent and fighting strength were top-notch. At least in the young man's eyes, no one could compare with Xiaochen's talent and fighting strength. It could be said that heroes cherished each other. It wasn't easy to meet someone with talent and fighting strength who could compare with him. Naturally, the young man didn't want Xiaochen to die in vain. Hearing this, Xiaochen didn't answer immediately. They didn't know each other, and the young man helped him. Naturally, he couldn't fully trust him. Seeing through Xiaochen's thoughts, the young man explained, "Don't think too much about it. I don't have any ulterior motives towards you. I just don't want to see you die here. Of course, as I said, I'm only responsible for blocking the monkeys for you for a maximum of 15 minutes. If you can't kill the Monkey King within 15 minutes, then I'll have to leave by myself." Hearing the young man's explanation, Xiaochen took a deep look at the young man. To be honest, the young man's appearance was very ordinary. He belonged to the type that you wouldn't notice if he was in a crowd. However, it was this kind of face that gave people an indescribable feeling. And this indescribable feeling came from the young man's temperament. The young man's strong confidence made him seem more handsome. It was also this strong confidence that made the young man stand out from the crowd no matter where he was, even if he wasn't very handsome. After staring at the young man for a while, Xiaochen finally nodded and said, "Okay, I can't kill the Monkey King within 15 minutes. You can leave by yourself." Although Xiaochen didn't know the young man, he didn't feel the slightest bit of hostility from him. Seeing Xiaochen nod, the young man smiled slightly. Then, the storage ring in his hand flashed and a long knife appeared in his hand. With the long knife in his hand, the young man's breath suddenly became fierce. His eyes also became very serious. "Remember, you only have 15 minutes. If you can't kill the Monkey King within 15 minutes, I will leave by myself," he said to Xiaochen indifferently. After finishing his words, without waiting for Xiaochen's reply, the young man directly rushed towards the group of monkeys and immediately engaged in a fierce battle with them. The young man didn't lie to Xiaochen. He did block the group of monkeys with his own strength. Only the Monkey King was left for Xiaochen. Looking at the Monkey King in front of him, Xiaochen felt that its breath was much stronger than the ordinary bloodfire monkeys. However, it still didn't exceed the level of a level 1 monster. Because of this, Xiaochen dared to fight with it. Otherwise, with his current cultivation at the profound Yellow Realm, it was absolutely impossible for him to fight with a level 2 monster. Scorching Sword Technique, Scorching Kill. As soon as he attacked, he directly used a killing move. The Qingyun sword was surrounded by streaks of fiery red spiritual power and fiercely stabbed towards the Monkey King. Xiaochen had already mastered 4 upper-class martial arts techniques, all of which had reached the perfection of martial arts. Among them, the Scorching Sword technique had the strongest attack power. Therefore, Xiaochen directly used the Scorching Sword technique. He only had 15 minutes, and this was the young man's limit. Seeing this, Xiaochen naturally didn't want to be entangled with the Monkey King. He tried his best to kill the Monkey King in the shortest time possible. One person restrained the group of monkeys, and the other killed the Monkey King. The two divided the work, and the battle immediately broke out. Although he only needed to face the Monkey King, Xiaochen was definitely under a lot of pressure. This was because the young man's task was to restrain the group of monkeys, and Xiao Chen's task was to kill the Monkey King. The Monkey King had already reached the peak of a level 1 monster, and was only one step away from becoming a level 2 monster. It wasn't that easy to kill the Monkey King. With a stab, the scorching sword technique chopped towards the Monkey King with incomparable power. Seeing this, the Monkey King roared angrily and fiercely punched out, fiercely colliding with the Qingyun sword. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 30. Xiao Chen's attack had infuriated the Monkey King. He had to admit that he had underestimated the Monkey King. The Monkey King's strength was comparable to a mysterious Aeon Realm warrior. Although it was only a Class 1 demonic beast, it already possessed the strength of a mysterious Origin Realm cultivator. His body could not help but retreat a dozen steps back. The arm that was holding the Qingyun sword was also slightly trembling because of the huge force from before. After gaining the upper hand with one strike, the Monkey King didn't give Xiao Chen any chance to take a breather. With a roar, it took the initiative to attack Xiao Chen. Facing the Monkey King's attack, Xiao Chen didn't show any signs of fear. Although the Monkey King's strength had exceeded his expectations, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't defeat it. Moreover, there was no other way out. The only way to escape was to kill the Monkey King. Xiao Chen still used the Scorching Flame sword technique. The true meaning of Scorching Flame wrapped around his sword as he engaged in a fierce battle with the Monkey King. After a few hundred moves, the injuries on Xiao Chen's body became more and more serious. At the same time, the Monkey King also had many sword wounds on its body. Xiao Chen didn't care about his life at all. Time was running out and Xiao Chen didn't have much time to waste. Taking the Monkey King's punch head-on, Xiao Chen fiercely stabbed out with his sword. The Qingyun sword directly penetrated the Monkey King's head. Before it died, the Monkey King let out a blood-curdling scream as its sturdy body fell backward. Finally, he succeeded in killing the Monkey King. Seeing the Monkey King fall, Xiao Chen's body couldn't stand still. He could only rely on the Qingyun sword to stand still. His mission was completed. At the same time, following the death of the Monkey King, the monkeys also let out a series of chaotic roars. Then, they scattered and escaped into the forest. He didn't pursue them. Killing the Monkey King was his limit. Just as the monkeys retreated, the young man came to Xiao Chen's side. He looked at Xiao Chen with a smile that didn't look like a smile. "How is it? Can you still walk?" "Yes." Hearing the young man's words, Xiao Chen nodded. "Then let's go quickly. The smell of blood will soon attract other demonic beasts." Under the guidance of the young man, the two of them quickly left the place. The young man seemed to be very familiar with the Demon Mountain range. First, he led Xiao Chen to a lake and cleaned their wounds. Then, he brought Xiao Chen to a cave. At first glance, it was obvious that this cave was man-made. There was nothing inside except for a futon. However, the location of the futon was very hidden. If it weren't for the young man leading the way, Xiao Chen wouldn't have been able to find it. "It's very safe here. You can rest assured and recuperate." After bringing Xiao Chen to the cave, the young man said with a smile. Without any hesitation, Xiao Chen settled down in the cave. Now that he was seriously injured, it would be dangerous for him to continue on his journey. It would be better for him to recuperate here. They met this young man inexplicably. They didn't even know each other's names. Even so, they were now living under the same roof. It only took 3 days. With the help of the healing elixirs given by Tsang Xian, Xiao Chen's injuries were no longer serious. After 3 days of getting along, Xiao Chen also learned that the young man's name was Chen Ling. He was 19 years old and his cultivation was at the completion of the Yellow Realm. He only knew Chen Ling's name, age, and cultivation. Xiao Chen didn't know anything else. As for the fact that Chen Ling was able to break through to the completion of the Yellow Realm at the age of 19, Xiao Chen was quite surprised. This kind of talent was not inferior to his own. After his injuries were healed, Xiao Chen originally planned to leave directly. However, Qianling suggested that they should practice together in the Demon Mountain range. In the face of Qianling's invitation, Xiaochen thought about it and agreed. After all, there was still half a year left before the 1-year agreement. There was no point in returning to the East Sword Pavilion now. On the contrary, although it was dangerous in the Demon Mountain range, he could also improve himself quickly. It should be known that in the Demon Mountain range, there were not only monsters, but also many precious spiritual fruits and herbs. They decided to practice together. In the next few months, 2 young men of 18 or 19 years old appeared in the Demon Mountain range. They searched for spiritual fruits and herbs in the Demon Mountain range and fought with monsters to train themselves. Xiaochen, damn it, I found 100 spirits fruit. Qianling said with a smile as he jumped down from a big tree. Qianling, quick, there is a level 2 monster here. Let's kill it together. After finding a level 2 monster, Xiaochen said excitedly. Damn, this is a level 3 herb, sun dragonwood, but there is a level 3 monster protecting it. Xiaochen, what do you say? Should we do it? Qianling looked at Xiaochen and asked after discovering a level 3 herb, sun dragonwood, but there was a level 3 monster protecting it. Nonsense, of course we should do it. Let's attack together and kill this beast first. Xiaochen replied. There was no time in the mountains. A few months passed in the blink of an eye. It was also in these few months that Xiaochen and Qianling became the best of friends and also the people who trusted each other the most. The two of them ate and lived together, searched for spiritual fruits and herbs together, and fought against monsters together. In countless thrilling and exciting situations, the relationship between the two of them became closer and closer. At the same time, the strength of the two of them was also rapidly improving. From the beginning, the two of them could only kill a level 2 monster together. Later on, the two of them could already fight a level 2 monster alone. When they joined forces, they could even fight a level 3 monster. Just like this, unknowingly, 5 months had passed. There was only 1 month left before the 1-year agreement. On this day, Xiaochen finally said that he wanted to leave. If he did not leave now, he was afraid that he would not be able to make it back to the East Sword Pavilion in time. Since young, no matter if it was Xiaochen or Qianling, they had never met someone of the same age who could keep up with their footsteps. Today, they finally met. No matter if it was talent or combat strength, the other party was the most outstanding person he had ever met. At the same time, he was also the only person who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. It was precisely because they had the same talent that the two of them hit it off so well. At this moment, when he heard that Xiaochen was leaving, Qianling did not say much. He smiled and said, "Just as well, I am also preparing to leave." "Okay." Hearing Qianling's words, Xiaochen nodded. Then, the two of them walked in opposite directions. After taking a few steps, almost at the same time, the two of them turned around and spoke at the same time. Hey, seeing that they stopped each other in unison, the two of them laughed at the same time. In the end, it was Qianling who spoke first. "You go first, I am at the East Sword Pavilion. If you have time, come and find me." Hearing Qianling's words, Xiaochen said with a smile. East Sword Pavilion? Hearing that Xiaochen was actually a disciple of the East Sword Pavilion, a strange look flashed in Qianling's eyes. However, he quickly recovered and replied to Xiaochen with a smile. "Okay, if I have time, I will definitely go. Yes, you have to work hard in your cultivation. Don't be left behind by me. You should think more about yourself. Catch up with me first. Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 31. They smiled at each other and left in a carefree manner. There were no sentimental words or any reluctant parting. Both Xiaochen and Qianling were determined to pursue the martial path. At the same time, they were not hesitant people. Therefore, there was nothing to be reluctant about parting with, because they both believed that there would be a day when they would meet again. After parting with Qianling, Xiaochen rushed back to the East Sword Pavilion. Xiaochen had been training in the Thousand Demon Mountain range for 5 months and was extremely familiar with this area. Xiaochen knew where the powerful monsters were and where the safest places were. Therefore, crossing the Thousand Demon Mountain range was not a difficult task for the current Xiaochen. While Xiaochen was on his way back to the East Sword Pavilion, the female Yiksha, Qian, was also returning to the East Sword Pavilion on the back of a green-feathered eagle. Since Qian was the only one who had returned, Sang Xian naturally asked her about it. However, if Xiaochen was present, he would definitely be unable to restrain himself from cursing at Qian. Junior brother said that he wants to train in the Thousand Demon Mountain range and then come back by himself. Experience my A**s. You were the one who forced me into it, but now you're the one who said that I wanted to experience it. In Xiaochen's view, Qian could be said to be extremely carefree during this year of training. In the first half of the year, she sold him to the Death Arena and threw him into the Thousand Demon Mountain range for the second half of the year. It could be said that Qian did not spend any effort at all. On the other hand, Xiaochen had brushed shoulders with the Grim Reaper countless times and experienced countless life and death crises. Sang Xian naturally did not fully believe Qian's answer, but since he had decided to hand Xiaochen over to Qian, he was already prepared. Moreover, Qian only returned now because she had been secretly protecting Xiaochen in the Thousand Demon Mountain range. Only when Xiaochen was ready to return did Qian return to the East Sword Pavilion first. Although she seemed to be indifferent to Xiaochen, Qian still loved Xiaochen very much. This could be seen from the fact that Qian could secretly protect Xiaochen. Moreover, whether it was selling Xiaochen to the deathmatch arena or forcing him into the Demon Mountain range, it seemed dangerous and ruthless, but Qian had secretly guaranteed Xiaochen's safety. She just didn't tell Xiaochen. On the surface, Qian appeared to be carefree and unrestrained, seemingly indifferent to Xiaochen. However, in secret, for the sake of Xiaochen's training this time, it could be said that she had put in a lot of effort, and even did not hesitate to owe Lin Wan a favor. There were only 3 days left until the year-end assessment. This year-end assessment was not only for the outer and inner disciples, but also for the core disciples. The purpose of the year-end assessment was to test the results of everyone's training over the past year. At the same time, it also urged the disciples not to slack off. The arrival of the year-end assessment made the atmosphere of the entire East Sword Pavilion tense. Many disciples usually did not show off, but during the year-end assessment, they could shine brightly and catch the attention of the higher-ups of the East Sword Pavilion. Just like Xiaochen, all the disciples of the East Sword Pavilion attached great importance to the year-end assessment. Damn it, that brat Xiaochen went out to train. Why hasn't he returned yet? In Wang Hu's residence in the first outer courtyard. Ever since he was defeated by Xiaochen in public, Wang Hu bore a grudge against Xiaochen in his heart. He had always wanted to ruthlessly humiliate Xiaochen during the year-end assessment, but there were only 3 days left until the day of the assessment, and Xiaochen had not returned yet. This made Wang Hu extremely depressed. Although he had been defeated by Xiaochen once, Wang Hu did not think that he would lose to Xiaochen. After all, he had suppressed his cultivation to fight with Xiaochen last time, and the year-end assessment did not say anything about suppressing one's cultivation. As long as he did not suppress his cultivation, Wang Hu was confident that he could ruthlessly beat Xiaochen. No matter how strong one's talent was, it was still talent before it could be turned into strength. He had already regarded Xiaochen as an enemy. Because of Xiaochen's appearance, Wang Hu felt that his position was being threatened. Wang Hu had always been recognized as the #1 disciple in the outer sect, but now, because of Xiaochen, many people felt that the #1 disciple in the outer sect should change hands. Even if it was not now, it would definitely change hands within 3 years. Either Wang Hu would break through to the Mystic Ian realm and enter the inner sect, or Xiaochen would catch up and forcefully push him down. It was precisely because his position as the #1 disciple in the outer sect was threatened by Xiaochen that Wang Hu had always wanted to defeat Xiaochen in public. For this reason, Wang Hu, who could have broken through to the Mystic Ian realm, had always suppressed his cultivation in order to wait for the year-end assessment. This was because the year-end assessment was the best opportunity to defeat Xiaochen. He wanted revenge. And just as Wang Hu was waiting with a stern hatred, 3 days passed in a flash, and the year-end assessment finally began. According to the order of the previous years, the core disciples' year-end assessment would be held first, then the inner sect, and finally the outer sect. It took 2 days for the core and inner sect disciples' year-end assessment to end. On the 3rd day, it was finally the outer sect disciples' turn. On this day, at the foot of a mountain in the East Sword Pavilion, this mountain was called Wanjian Peak, and it was specially used for the year-end assessment. Starting from the foot of the mountain to the peak, the entire Wanjian Peak was covered with restrictions. Those who entered had to constantly resist the pressure from the restrictions. At the same time, when they reached the mountainside, there would be an explosion of sword intent and sword chi. Only those who could resist these and finally reach the mountainside would be considered qualified. Of course, the higher you climbed, the better your results would be. However, no one had been able to reach the peak for hundreds of years, whether it was a core disciple, an inner sect disciple, or an outer sect disciple, no one had been able to do it. Of course, there was one thing that needed to be mentioned. The pressure and sword intent that the disciples of the 3 levels faced during the assessment were different. For example, the pressure that the outer court disciples faced during the assessment was at least twice as much as the inner court disciples. At the same time, there would be no sword intent, only sword chi. Because it was the outer sect assessment, San Xian personally presided over it. Following his command, many outer sect disciples began to climb the Wanjian Peak. Damn it, that guy actually didn't come back. Before climbing, Wang Hu looked around, but still couldn't find Xiao Chen's figure. He cursed under his breath and immediately began to climb. They thought that Xiao Chen would not be able to make it back in time. However, just as the outer sect examination was about to begin, a handsome young man dressed in white slowly walked over to the East Sword Pavilion. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. This young man was Xiao Chen. Finally, he returned to the East Sword Pavilion. Standing at the East Sword Pavilion's mountain gate, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "I finally made it." After traveling all the way from the Thousand Demon Mountain range, he finally made it in time for the Sword Pavilion's year-end assessment. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 32. After returning to the East Sword Pavilion, Xiao Chen could finally relax. To Xiao Chen, the East Sword Pavilion was his second home. Just as Xiao Chen couldn't help but smile and mutter to himself, a pleasant female voice sounded. "Little junior brother, you're really slow. The year-end assessment has already begun and you're only back now." Upon hearing this voice, the smile on Xiao Chen's face immediately disappeared. He turned around and saw that Qi Yan had unknowingly appeared here. Facing Qi Yan, the anger in Xiao Chen's heart unconsciously rose. For the past year, he had been tormented by Qi Yan enough. He also blamed himself for not being strong enough. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would definitely not hesitate to teach Qi Yan a lesson. "What's wrong? You seem to have a stomach full of anger and want to exchange a few blows with senior sister?" Seeing the change in Xiao Chen's expression, Qi Yan said with a smile. "Exchange a few blows? Stinky woman, you only know how to bully the weak." Xiao Chen cursed inwardly. However, on the surface, he naturally didn't dare to provoke Qi Yan. Otherwise, he would be beaten up again. With a smile, Xiao Chen came to Qi Yan's side and said, "Senior sister, what are you saying? I haven't seen senior sister for a long time and I miss you. Endure, I'll endure you first. As the saying goes, it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Wait until my strength catches up, then I'll slowly deal with you, stinky woman." While smiling, Xiao Chen thought inwardly. Glancing indifferently at Xiao Chen's smile, Qi Yan said with a disdainful smile, "Don't give me that. Disgusting. Come with me. If you're late, you won't be able to make it in time for the year-end assessment." Naturally, she knew that Xiao Chen didn't mean what he said. Qi Yan was too lazy to talk nonsense. After all, time was tight. Xiao Chen still had to participate in the year-end assessment. The reason why she appeared here was to wait for Xiao Chen. Previously, when Xiao Chen didn't appear, Qian was secretly anxious in her heart. Following behind Qian, the two quickly arrived at the foot of the Myriad Swords Peak. Upon seeing Xiaochen, the group of outer court elders present was slightly stunned. Zhang Xian nodded slightly. "You're back? Go on, there should still be enough time." It had only been an hour since the year-end assessment began. With Xiaochen's strength, he should be able to catch up with the others. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's words, Xiaochen nodded slightly and immediately stepped onto the Thousand Swords Peak. Xiaochen's appearance naturally attracted the attention of the other outer sect disciples on the Thousand Swords Peak. Among them, the one with the biggest reaction was definitely Wang Hu. The moment he saw Xiaochen, Wang Hu was extremely excited. He did not hesitate to suppress his cultivation in order to humiliate Xiaochen. He thought that he would not have the chance, but who would have thought that Xiaochen would catch up at the last moment? Ha, the heavens really have eyes. Xiaochen, even the heavens are helping me. This time, I'll see what tricks you can play. I'll make the year-end assessment your nightmare. Wang Hu was ecstatic in his heart. At the same time, he also signaled to the people around him with his eyes. These people were his followers. At this time, when they received Wang Hu's signal, they nodded one after another and then deliberately slowed down, as if they were deliberately waiting for Xiaochen. He was an hour later than the others. However, in the face of the oppression of the Thousand Swords Peak, Xiaochen appeared to be extremely relaxed. He was no longer the same person he was a year ago. In this year, under the inhumane torture of Qian, Xiaochen had undergone a complete transformation. Xiaochen strolled towards the peak of the mountain. Just when he was not far from the mountainside, he saw the people around Wang Hu blocking his way. There were a total of 18 people. Xiaochen glanced at them and said indifferently, "Why? Are you guys welcoming me?" Xiaochen already knew that these people were Wang Hu's subordinates, so he did not have a good expression. When they heard this, the more than 10 people's faces darkened and they said in an unfriendly tone, "Xiaochen, if I were you, I wouldn't come to participate in the year-end assessment today. That's right, because today will be your doomsday. Senior brother Wang Hu will personally knock you down the mountain, so that you won't even be able to reach the mountainside." Haha. There was no prohibition against fighting on the Thousand Swords Peak. During the climbing process, disciples could attack each other and also obstruct others from climbing. This was all in accordance with the rules. Therefore, Wang Hu dared to openly attack Xiaochen in the year-end assessment. Listening to the mockery of these more than 10 people, Xiaochen's expression was calm. Did these guys still think that he was the same as he was a year ago? That he needed Wang Hu to suppress his cultivation to win? They were simply thinking too much. Without any superfluous nonsense, Xiaochen walked forward slowly. As he walked, he said, "I'll give you guys one last chance. If you don't want to roll down from here, get out of my way." He did not care about these more than 10 people blocking his way. When they heard Xiaochen's words, the more than 10 people's eyes narrowed slightly. The leader even shouted angrily, "Xiaochen, do you think that this is still your apprenticeship ceremony? Do you think that we still need to suppress our cultivation to have a fair fight with you? Let me tell you, this is the year-end assessment. We don't need to suppress our cultivation. If you know what's good for you, kneel down." There was no need to suppress their cultivation. Xiaochen was just a disciple who had just entered the outer sect for a year. How could he be a match for these senior disciples? However, in the face of this person's reprimand, before he could finish speaking, Xiaochen directly attacked. He punched this person's face fiercely. Instantly, this person's nose collapsed, and blood splattered everywhere. "Forget it, I've changed my mind. You guys should just roll down," Xiaochen said indifferently after punching out without any warning. After being hit by an unexpected punch, Xiaochen's strength had completely exceeded this disciple's expectations. What happened next was simple. Although the other party had a large number of people, in Xiaochen's eyes, they were just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. Under Xiaochen's violent attacks, Wang Hu's 18 lackeys were soon beaten to the brink of death. They lay on the ground, unable to stand up. One kick at a time, Xiaochen kicked them down Wanjian Peak one by one. They rolled from halfway up the mountain all the way to the foot of the mountain. They no longer had the strength to climb Wanjian Peak. This also meant that these 18 people's year-end assessment had ended in failure. At the same time, their cultivation resources in the coming year would also be greatly reduced. Xiaochen paid them no mind. After dealing with them, he continued to climb up the mountain. Wherever he went, the outer yard disciples would look over at him in shock. What's going on? It's only been a year, and Xiaochen's strength has already reached such a level? In the face of 18 senior outer sect disciples, none of them suppressed their cultivation, but they were still crushed by Xiaochen. At this moment, no one dared to treat Xiaochen as a new disciple. The fact that 18 senior outer sect disciples were crushed by him was enough to prove Xiaochen's strength. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 33. No one dared to belittle Xiaochen anymore. At the same time, under everyone's gaze, Xiaochen strolled to the mountainside. Wang Hu had already stopped him there. Many outer disciples gathered around. They all wanted to see how Xiaochen would deal with Wang Hu, the #1 outer disciple. Xiaochen, be careful. I think Wang Hu must have suppressed his cultivation. Otherwise, with his strength, he would have broken through the mysterious Ian realm and entered the inner gate. Seeing Xiaochen coming, Mo Jia and the others took the initiative to greet him and reminded him worriedly. Although Xiaochen had defeated Wang Hu once, Wang Hu had suppressed his cultivation at that time. However, Wang Hu did not need to suppress his cultivation at the moment, and it was impossible for him to do so. As such, the battle was extremely disadvantageous for Xiaochen. Facing Mo Jia and the others' kind reminders, Xiaochen smiled and said, "Don't worry." He signaled everyone not to worry and strode to Wang Hu. Xiaochen had known since a year ago that Wang Hu would hold a grudge against him. Therefore, he was not surprised by Wang Hu's actions today and spoke to Wang Hu with an indifferent expression. "You want to fight with me? Cut the crap, Xiaochen. Either you apologize to me and I will let you go, or you get out of here today." Hearing Xiaochen's words, Wang Hu shouted coldly. "Sigh, if that's the case, then let's fight." Wang Hu obviously did not want to give up. It was impossible for him to apologize, so he could only fight. As soon as he finished speaking, the Qingyun sword appeared in Xiaochen's hand. Sword Qi emerged. Seeing this, Wang Hu also took out his own sword. He naturally did not have a mysterious weapon like Xiaochen. His sword was just an ordinary weapon. His momentum was constantly rising. At this moment, Wang Hu did not hold back at all. His vigorous cultivation of the completion of the Yellow Realm soared to the sky. Feeling the breath of Wang Hu's cultivation, Xiaochen was keenly aware that this guy had indeed suppressed his cultivation. In order to humiliate him, Wang Hu did not hesitate to suppress his cultivation. With a roar, Wang Hu took the initiative to attack. The long sword in his hand fiercely pierced out, and the sword shadow was instantly displayed. Wang Hu's sword shadow kill had also reached the transcendent level. A year ago, Xiaochen had only been able to raise his sword shadow kill to the transcendent level with the help of Wang Hu. However, a year later, Xiaochen felt that Wang Hu's sword shadow kill was still too weak. There were at least 3 loopholes, and any one of those loopholes was enough for him to easily break Wang Hu's sword shadow kill. Today was different from the past. In the first half of the year, Xiaochen had practiced 4 upper-class martial techniques to the realm of perfection. In the second half of the year, Xiaochen had practiced 6 upper-class martial techniques to the realm of perfection. Therefore, Xiaochen now had 10 upper-class martial techniques to the realm of perfection. His understanding of the Tao of the sword had improved a lot. Therefore, in Xiaochen's eyes, Wang Hu's swordsmanship was not full of loopholes, but it was absolutely not a threat. Xiaochen casually flicked his sword and accurately hit one of the sword shadows, breaking the surface with a single point. Wang Hu's sword shadow kill was instantly broken by Xiaochen's sword. Everything seemed so casual, and Xiaochen did not even move his feet. Seeing his sword shadow being broken by Xiaochen so easily, Wang Hu's face suddenly changed. He said with a look of disbelief, "How is this possible? You! How is this possible? That was the sword shadow strike of the transcendent state, but it was broken by Xiaochen with a simple strike. Not only Wang Hu, but the other outer disciples around him were also shocked. It was as if they had just met Xiaochen for the first time. No one could understand how Xiaochen could have grown so much in just 1 year. This speed of progress was simply unprecedented. Ignoring the shock of the surrounding disciples, Xiaochen slowly walked towards Wang Hu with his sword in hand. As he walked, he said lightly, "Nothing is impossible. You're just too weak." Weak? As the recognized first disciple of the outer disciples, was Wang Hu weak? Obviously not. It could only be said that Xiaochen was too abnormal. After finishing his words, without waiting for Wang Hu's reply, Xiaochen's body gradually emitted a wave of spiritual power that had reached the completion of the Yellow Realm. Perceiving this wave of spiritual power, the surrounding disciples were stunned again. The completion of the Yellow Realm. How is this possible? One should know that when Xiaochen left the school a year ago, his cultivation was only at the initial completion of the Yellow Realm. But now, in just 1 year, he had broken through to the completion of the Yellow Realm. This speed of practice, his combat power and cultivation were beyond everyone's expectations. They thought that they had overestimated Xiaochen. But until they saw it with their own eyes, they realized that they had never really understood Xiaochen's talent. He was not only a monster, he was simply defying nature. Under the shocked gaze of the crowd, Xiaochen swung his sword and the sword chi flashed. Facing Xiaochen's attack, Wang Hu recovered from the shock and a crazy look appeared on his face. "Xiaochen, do you think that you are the only one who has been improving in this 1 year?" Scorching fire swordsmanship. In 1 year, Wang Hu had practiced another upper-class martial arts technique to the perfection of martial arts. It was the scorching fire swordsmanship. As the most powerful upper-class martial arts technique, the scorching fire swordsmanship was extremely popular among the outer disciples of the East Sword Pavilion. The scorching spiritual power of the scorching fire surged crazily. With the help of the sword chi, it directly shattered Xiaochen's sword chi. 2 upper-class martial arts techniques at the perfection of martial arts. Wang Hu's move was indeed impressive. No wonder he was recognized as the first disciple of the outer disciples. But this feeling only lasted for a moment. After Wang Hu performed the scorching fire swordsmanship, Xiaochen smiled indifferently. "Let me show you the real scorching fire swordsmanship." Unfortunately, Xiaochen also knew the scorching fire swordsmanship. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaochen slashed out with his sword again. The scorching fire swordsmanship was performed. The same spiritual power of the scorching fire swordsmanship, with the help of the sword chi, quickly and violently slashed towards Wang Hu. When the same sword technique was performed by the two of them, it gave off a completely different feeling. Xiaochen's scorching fire swordsmanship had obviously been practiced to the point of perfection. Its power was far beyond Wang Hu's. Looking at the scorching fire swordsmanship that was slashing towards him, Wang Hu's face turned pale. He never thought that it would turn out like this. He originally thought that he could ruthlessly humiliate Xiaochen in front of everyone during the year-end examination. But reality mercilessly slapped him in the face. After a year, Wang Hu no longer had any power to fight back against Xiaochen. In the face of Xiaochen's slash, Wang Hu did not even have the slightest intention to resist. He could only watch as the sword chi flashed past. Just when everyone thought that this slash would seriously injure Wang Hu, at the last moment, the sword chi suddenly disappeared. This was obviously done by Xiaochen. Originally, if Xiaochen did not stop with this slash, it would definitely be enough to seriously injure Wang Hu. However, Xiaochen did not do so and chose to let Wang Hu go. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 34. Xiaochen chose to stop at the last moment. Although he knew that Wang Hu still held a grudge against him, Wang Hu was no longer a threat to him. Moreover, there was no enmity between the two of them. Killing Wang Hu or not wouldn't make any difference to him. In fact, the enmity between the two of them was entirely caused by Wang Hu's narrow-mindedness. He wanted to prove himself through Xiaochen. However, he didn't know that in Xiao Chen's eyes, Wang Hu was just a negligible existence. He didn't pose any threat to Xiao Chen at all. Without injuring Wang Hu, Xiao Chen sheathed his sword. Then, he turned to look at Mo Jia, Qin Shiru and the others and said with a smile, "I'll go up first. Come to the dustless residence tonight. I'll treat all of you to a drink." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Chen directly walked past Wang Hu, who was in a daze, and continued towards the top of the Wanjian Peak. He directly ignored Wang Hu. After this battle, the #1 position in the outer sect had completely changed hands. Who would have thought that Wang Hu, who had been famous in the outer sect for many years, would be defeated by a new outer sect disciple who had only been in the outer sect for a year? Moreover, he was defeated without any ability to fight back. This kid is really... At the foot of the mountain, Zhang Xian smiled in a gratified manner as he watched Xiao Chen's back with eyes filled with deep meaning. He was naturally able to tell just how much Xiao Chen had improved over the past year. However, if that was all, it was still impossible for Xiao Chen to defeat Tian Dao from the Blood Devil Hall. Sigh, there was no other way. The outer sect disciples of the East Sword Pavilion were getting worse with each generation. In the competition with the other major forces in the Eastern Sun region, the East Sword Pavilion's core disciples and inner sect disciples were not afraid. Only the outer sect disciples were always at a disadvantage. The reason was that the East Sword Pavilion didn't have a capable outer sect disciple. Zhang Xian had great expectations for Xiao Chen, but Xiao Chen clearly did not know what Zhang Xian was thinking. Zhang Xian had already crossed the halfway point of the mountain, and sharp sword aura after sword aura frantically attacked Xiao Chen. Sword chi that hadn't even reached the entry stage was naturally of no threat to Xiao Chen. However, he didn't act carelessly because he knew that the higher one climbed the Myriad Sword's peak, the stronger the sword chi would become. It was said that during the outer court exam, the sword chi at the peak had reached the initial stage. Sword chi at the level of minor accomplishment was definitely not something that an outer court disciple could contend against. This was because the only way to resist the invasion of sword chi was to use one's own sword chi to resist it. In other words, if one wanted to reach the peak, then one must possess sword chi at the level of minor accomplishment. However, in the outer court, who could possess sword chi at the level of minor accomplishment? One must know that even in the inner court, there weren't many people who possessed sword chi at the level of minor accomplishment, let alone the outer court. Every step he took was extremely firm. Looking at Xiao Chen's back, many outer court disciples at the halfway point of the mountain were stunned. They wanted to see how far Xiao Chen could go, and whether he could really reach the peak of the Myriad Sword's peak and become the first person to reach the peak in 100 years. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on Xiao Chen, but he didn't seem to mind at all. Step by step, he walked towards the peak. As he climbed all the way up, the closer he got to the peak, the sharper the sword chi became. At this moment, he had already reached the limit of the entry stage, and was only one step away from the initial stage. Sword chi gushed out from his body, firmly protecting him against the sword chi on the Myriad Sword's peak. 1,000 meters, the last 1,000 meters. Seeing that Xiao Chen was only 1,000 meters away from the peak, many outer court disciples tensed up. In this year's year-end assessment, the best result for the core and inner court disciples was 500 meters away from the peak. Of course, the pressure they endured was far from comparable to the outer court disciples. However, it was worth mentioning that the ones who set these two records were Xiao Chen's big senior brother and second senior sister. Would Xiao Chen be able to break the record of the big brother and the second sister? Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Chen finally made it to the last 1,000 meters. As soon as he made it there, the pressure of the sword aura suddenly increased and reached the level of small accomplishment. Sword chi at the initial stage. So what? Feeling the increase in the sword chi, Xiao Chen's eyes glinted with determination. Then, the sword chi in his body also increased sharply and reached the initial stage. That's right. In this year, apart from his combat strength and cultivation, Xiao Chen's sword chi had also broken through from the initial stage to the initial stage. Xiao Chen took a step back at the beginning, but he quickly stabilized himself. Then, he continued to climb. Although his speed was slower, his footsteps weren't shaky at all. Every step he took was extremely firm. Seeing that Xiaochen was getting closer and closer to the peak and even surpassed the records set by Qian and Zhangxian, the outer court disciples couldn't remain calm anymore. This kid has actually broken through to the initial stage. Zhangxian smiled as he looked at Xiaochen, who was climbing to the peak. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that Xiaochen's sword qi had reached the initial stage. An outer court disciple with initial stage sword qi. Got to say, Xiaochen had done something that no one had been able to do for 100 years. Even Qian only broke through to the initial stage after entering the inner court. Hearing her master's praise, Qian also revealed a faint smile. She was very satisfied with Xiaochen's performance. In just a short 2 hours, Xiaochen took the last step and successfully reached the peak of the Myriad Sword's peak. The sword aura around him disappeared in an instant, and everything on the peak returned to normal. Xiaochen looked down at the dumbfounded outer sect disciples from above. At that moment, a sense of heroism welled up in his heart. Standing there meant that he was standing at the highest peak of the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion. From a new disciple to the top of the outer court, it only took Xiaochen a year. No one knew who spoke first, but all the outer court disciples gathered on the mountainside shouted in unison. Greetings, senior brother Xiaochen, the top of the outer court, climbing the Myriad Sword's peak. Xiaochen deserved to be addressed as senior brother. This was also the heartfelt admiration of all the outer court disciples. Even Wang Hu had to bow his head and greet him. Qin Shuru was mesmerized as he looked at the figure on the peak of the Myriad Sword's peak with infatuation. Xiaochen's white clothes fluttered in the breeze. At this moment, in Qin Shuru's eyes, Xiaochen was so perfect. Everyone was watching. Not only the outer court disciples, but many inner court disciples and core disciples also saw the scene of Xiaochen reaching the peak. Some were envious, some were jealous. However, on a mountain peak not far away, 2 young men stood side by side. One of them laughed. "Qin Heng, your junior brother is not bad. He has already broken your record. Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 35. The 2 youths were both in their 20s. Furthermore, there were 3 golden swords embroidered on their chests, which were arranged in a triangular formation. This proved that they were core disciples of the East Sword Pavilion. Hearing his companion's words, the youth called Qin Heng smiled indifferently and said, "What's wrong with that? He is my junior brother. Naturally, he will surpass me." Qin Heng was Xiaochen's senior brother and also Zhangxian's first disciple. He was now the #1 core disciple of the East Sword Pavilion and ranked second on the Zhenwu Earth ranking in the Dongyang region. His cultivation had reached the perfect Earth mirror. While the 2 were talking, Xiaochen had already walked down the Wanjian peak. Seeing Xiaochen being taken away by Zhangxian, Qin Heng said with a smile, "Let's go. I should also get to know my junior brother." The year-end assessment did not disappoint. Following Zhangxian back to his residence, Zhangxian said with satisfaction towards Xiaochen's performance today. "Not bad. You have indeed not wasted this year. You have improved a lot." Those who were familiar with Zhangxian knew that he would not easily praise someone. Even Qian and Qin Heng were rarely praised by Zhangxian. Facing Zhangxian's praise, Xiaochen replied with a smile, "I have to thank second senior sister. If it wasn't for her, how could I have such growth? Isn't that right, second senior sister?" On the surface, Xiaochen's words seemed to be thanking Qian. However, the resentment in his words was very strong. Hearing these words, Qian smiled unnaturally. Then, she glared fiercely at Xiaochen and said, "Junior brother, you don't have to be so polite. Don't worry, senior sister will still treat you well in the future." It was an undisguised threat. Seeing this, Zhangxian waved his hand and said, "All right, the time for the battle for the spirit vein has been set. It will be in 3 days. Chener, I am not worried about your senior brother and second senior sister. Right now, the most important problem is still you. Moreover, I also believe that the Blood Demon Hall will definitely place the breakthrough on Tian Dao." Song Xian signaled the two to stop fooling around and said seriously. 3 against 3. Song Xian was not worried about Qin Heng and Qi Yan because the key to this battle was still Xiao Chen and Tian Dao. It was even exaggerated to say that the victory between Xiao Chen and Tian Dao would directly affect the ownership of the spirit vein. Therefore, the burden on Xiao Chen's shoulders was not light. After hearing Song Xian's words, Xiao Chen knew that the East Sword Pavilion attached great importance to this matter. After all, it was a spirit vein that had never been exploited before. There was no way they could not afford to not attach great importance to it. "Don't worry, Master. I will do my best," Xiao Chen assured Song Xian. Song Xian nodded slightly and replied, "Yes, I believe in you. You have grown to this extent in just a year. This is enough to prove that you are not inferior to Tian Dao." Song Xian naturally had confidence in Xiao Chen. This was his disciple. Moreover, Xiao Chen had used practical actions to prove that his judgment was right. In just a year, the former number one in the outer sect, Wang Hu, was like a clay chicken and pottery dog in Xiao Chen's hands. Therefore, regardless of the outcome, just based on the current situation, Xiao Chen was indeed the only person in the East Sword Pavilion who could compete with Tian Dao. It could be seen that the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion was indeed a little weak. Compared to the other big shots, the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion was an entire level weaker. In this regard, Xiao Chen was also curious and asked for the reason. In the face of Xiao Chen's inquiry, Song Xian did not hide anything and explained the overall situation of the East Sun region to Xiao Chen in detail. Perhaps because Song Xian wanted Xiao Chen to carry the banner of the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion, he explained in great detail. According to Song Xian, there were 5 big shots in the entire East Sun region. They were the East Sword Pavilion, the Blood Demon Hall, the Myriad Immortal House, the Leshan Mansion, and the Fire Cloud Sect. These 5 big shots were like 5 mountains that occupied more than 90% of the cultivation resources in the entire East Sun region. There were countless dynasties and families under them. They were so powerful that no one in the entire East Sun region could compete with them. It could be said that the East Sun region was the world of these 5 big shots. However, since 3 years ago, peerless heavens prides had emerged one after another from the other 4 big shots, except for the East Sword Pavilion. These heavens prides were now in the outer sect. In the face of these 4 heavens prides that had suddenly emerged from the 4 big shots, no one in the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion could compare with them. In other words, it was not that the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion had declined, but that the outer sect of the other 4 big shots had produced true heavens prides. In contrast, the East Sword Pavilion did not have such a leading figure. In the past 3 years, the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion had become weaker and weaker in front of the other 4 big shots. In addition, under normal circumstances, the competition between the 5 great leaders was between the outer court and the inner court. There were some unwritten rules. Therefore, when the outer court disciples of the East Sword Pavilion were at a disadvantage, the inner court disciples could not help them. Tian Dao of the Blood Demon Hall, Mu Qing of the Myriad Immortal House, Lin Xing of the Leshan Mansion, and Zhao Wuyun of the Fire Cloud Sect were the leading figures of the outer sect of the 4 big shots. Their cultivation had reached the completion of the Yellow Realm, and they all had the record of killing warriors of the mysterious Yuan Realm. In the East Sun region, their fame had even surpassed the core disciples of the 5 big shots. They were called the 4 hidden dragons of the East Sun region, which meant that they were the 4 hidden dragons of the East Sun region. After explaining the situation of the East Sun region to Xiao Chen in detail, Xiao Chen also understood why the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion was so miserable. Just as Song Xian's voice fell, Qin Heng slowly walked over from the distance with a smile on his face. "Master, you're overestimating the morale of others and diminishing our own. They have their own hidden dragons, and now our East Sword Pavilion also has one. I believe that junior brother will definitely be able to contend against these 4 guys," Song Xian unhappily retorted after hearing Qin Heng's words. "Go to the side, All you know is to play with words. You were born a few years earlier. If you were born at the same time as these four fellows, at the same age, would you be their match? The four hidden dragons. Although they were only in the Yellow Realm, the top leaders of the five magnates admitted that the achievements of the four hidden dragons at the same age were unmatched. Even Qin Heng's achievements at the same age as the four hidden dragons were far inferior to theirs. Therefore, the top leaders of the five magnates even said that if the four hidden dragons were given more time, the situation of the entire East Sun region would change. The East Sword Pavilion, which did not have any hidden dragons, would most likely be eliminated. Such a prediction made Song Xian angry and helpless. Indeed, the four hidden dragons' talents were unparalleled. In the East Sun region, no one could surpass them in terms of talent. However, the East Sword Pavilion did not have any such people. Song Xian felt helpless, but when he saw Xiaochen, his eyes lit up with hope. In Song Xian's eyes, Xiaochen was the hidden dragon of the East Sword Pavilion. Only he could lead the outer sect of the East Sword Pavilion against the suppression of the four hidden dragons. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 36. It could be said that he had high hopes for Xiaochen. The East Sword Pavilion was indeed in dire need of a hidden dragon. Only an exceptional heaven pride of the same level would be able to stand up against the four hidden dragons. Don't think that the four hidden dragons were only suppressing the East Sword Pavilion in the outer sect. As time passed, the other four great heads would gradually grow and completely suppress the East Sword Pavilion. When the hidden dragon emerged from the abyss and became a true dragon, if the East Sword Pavilion did not have a true dragon of its own, what could it use to contend against them? Without mentioning the distant future, based on the growth rate of the four hidden dragons, it would not be long before they were promoted to the inner sect. When that time came, wouldn't the inner sect of the East Sword Pavilion be in the same situation as the outer sect? The outer sect would be completely suppressed by the four hidden dragons. What about the inner sect? The core disciples would be completely suppressed. In the end, the entire East Sword Pavilion would not even be able to raise its head under the pressure of the four hidden dragons. Without its own hidden dragon, the East Sword Pavilion would sooner or later decline. This was something that Song Xian had long understood. This was the reason why he was so fond of Xiaochen. He only hoped that he would be able to carry the banner of the East Sword Pavilion and fight a fierce battle with the four hidden dragons, ensuring that the East Sword Pavilion would not decline for 10,000 years. Knowing Song Xian's expectations, Xiaochen also understood that the current situation of the East Sword Pavilion was indeed not good. Although it would not affect the overall situation now, when the hidden dragon emerged from the abyss and became a true dragon, the East Sword Pavilion would truly be doomed if it did not have its own true dragon. After staying at Song Xian's place for 4 hours, Xiaochen and the other two bid farewell and left. They had originally agreed to treat Emojie and the rest to a drink at the Dustless House, but Qin Heng and Qi Yan insisted on tagging along. Left with no choice, they could only bring the two of them to the Dustless House. At night, the group drank and chatted in the courtyard. Qin Heng was not as frightening as Qi Yan, and was very easygoing. Very quickly, he got along well with Emojie and the rest. They drank until late into the night, before the group left one after another. Xiaochen also fell asleep. Xiaochen didn't cultivate. He had been cultivating bitterly for a year. Tonight, he planned to relax appropriately. There was no benefit in blindly cultivating. Alternating between tension and relaxation was the best way to cultivate. He fell into a deep sleep. Xiaochen did not know that at this time, in a secluded place outside the sect, Qin Heng and Qin Shuru were walking together. Walking side by side in the middle of the night, Qin Shuru helplessly glanced at Qin Shuru and said, "Shuru, it's almost time. A few days ago, Father sent me a letter asking me to send you back. Big brother, I don't want to marry Mu Qing." Qin Shuru said stubbornly after hearing Qin Heng's words. Qin Heng was Qin Shuru's older brother. Xiaochen didn't know this, and neither did Emojie and the others. Qin Shuru had never told anyone about this. She wanted to marry Mu Qing. Qin Shuru and Mu Qing were engaged. Hearing Qin Shuru's words, Qin Heng said indifferently. Shuru, do you like junior brother? Qin Shuru didn't answer or refute. Apparently, it was a tacit agreement. Seeing this, Qin Heng sighed helplessly. This situation was a little troublesome. Of course, Qin Heng naturally hoped that Qin Shuru could be together with Xiaochen. However, there was no other way. His father had already made a decision, and it was hard to change it. Sighing softly, Qin Heng said to Qin Shuru with a complicated expression, Shuru, you should know that there is no turning back. At most, you have 1 more month. If you don't take the initiative to return, father will definitely come to the East Sword Pavilion personally. If you really like Xiaochen, give your first time to him. It's better than letting Mu Qing take advantage of you. Qin Shuru was stunned by Qin Heng's words. After a long while, she slowly said, Big brother, give me another half a month. Tell father not to come. When the time comes, I will return by myself. As if she had made a decision, Qin Heng didn't say anything after hearing Qin Shuru's words. He knew what his younger sister was thinking and felt extremely helpless. Qin Heng nodded silently. No one knew what Qin Heng and Qin Shuiro talked about that night. Nothing was said throughout the night. Early the next morning, Xiaochen walked out of his room and took a deep breath. He smiled and said, For hidden dragons suppressing the East Sword Pavilion. But I'm afraid that will only exist in fantasy. After saying that, Xiaochen told Qing Yao and Qing Luo that he had something to do and that he would be out for a day. He told them not to worry, and then he went to the inner sect alone. This was his first time in the inner sect and he was already the #1 disciple in the outer sect. Xiaochen naturally wasn't a nobody in the East Sword Pavilion. Soon, there were inner sect disciples who recognized him. After asking around and finding out where Qian lived, Xiaochen directly went to her door. She didn't expect Xiaochen to actually take the initiative to look for her. In the courtyard, looking at Xiaochen, Qian asked with a smile, What's wrong? You actually took the initiative to come to me today. Weren't you afraid to be with me? Xiaochen taking the initiative to look for her made Qian feel very strange. In response, Xiaochen revealed a mischievous smile and said, How can that be? Senior sister is such a beauty. I can't wait to be with you every day. As he said that, he glanced at Qian's majestic chest with a perverted gaze. Little junior brother, if you want to die, you can just say it. I will definitely fulfill your wish. Sensing Xiaochen's gaze, Qian's smile became even brighter, but the coldness in her eyes continued to condense. Knowing that he should stop while he was ahead, Xiaochen knew that if he continued to tease her, Qian would definitely be angry. Immediately, he stopped joking and said to Qian seriously, Senior sister, I want to accept a mission. Accept a mission? Why did you come to the inner sect to accept a mission? Isn't there a mission hall in the outer sect? Qian asked doubtfully when she heard Xiaochen's words. The mission I accepted didn't have one in the outer sect. No? What mission do you want to accept? I want to accept a mission to kill a mysterious Origin Realm martial artist. He directly stated his intention. However, Qian was stunned when she heard Xiaochen's words. What did he mean? He wanted to accept a mission to kill a mysterious Origin Realm martial artist? Was this kid crazy? Her first impression was that Xiaochen was crazy. A Yellow Realm martial artist wanted to kill a mysterious Origin Realm martial artist. If this wasn't crazy, what was it? He was obviously courting death. Facing Qian's surprise, Xiaochen still said calmly, How about it, senior sister? Can you help me arrange it? It's best if it's not too troublesome. It's the kind that can be done in a day. At first, Qian didn't know what Xiaochen meant, but soon, she came back to her senses. Xiaochen was obviously doing this for the 4 hidden dragons. They all had the record of killing a mysterious Origin Realm martial artist when they were in the Yellow Realm. Today, Xiaochen also wanted to challenge a mysterious Origin Realm martial artist. Without a doubt, Xiaochen wanted to prove to the world that the East Sword Pavilion also had its own hidden dragons. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 37. Qian looked at Xiaochen with a complicated gaze. She had never imagined that Xiaochen would actually choose to challenge a mysterious Yuan stage expert. Xiaochen was undoubtedly considering the East Sword Pavilion's reputation. Last night, Xiaochen had heard from Qin Heng about the discussions regarding the competition between the East Sword Pavilion and the Blood Demon Hall. Over 80% of the people in the entire Dongyang region believed that the East Sword Pavilion would undoubtedly lose. The reason was very simple. No one in the East Sword Pavilion's outer sect could contend against Tian Dao. Of the 3 matches, one had already been decided before it had even begun. The East Sword Pavilion doesn't have any hidden dragons, so we can't see anything yet. However, as time passes, they will definitely be kicked out by the other 4 hegemons. Yeah, the 4 hidden dragons are currently only in the outer sect, but they have already suppressed the East Sword Pavilion's outer sect to the point where they can't even raise their heads. It will soon be the East Sword Pavilion's turn. Don't go too far. The Blood Demon Hall will definitely emerge victorious in this battle for the Spirit Vein. Once Tian Dao appears, who in the East Sword Pavilion's outer sect will be able to contend against him? These words were said by Qin Heng yesterday. From start to end, Xiaochen had not expressed his opinion. In the beginning, Qian was somewhat depressed. After all, Xiaochen's performance was too indifferent. Who could have imagined that Xiaochen would take the initiative to look for her early in the morning? After a long silence, Qian finally revealed an extremely rare serious expression. Junior brother, are you sure? You want to challenge a mysterious Yuan stage practitioner? Xiaochen nodded in response to Qian's inquiry. Subsequently, the 2 of them arrived at the inner sect mission hall. As the number 1 disciple of the inner sect and Sang Xian's disciple, Qian naturally had quite a few privileges. After explaining her intentions, the elders of the inner sect mission hall all had interesting expressions on their faces. The number 1 disciple of the outer sect was actually going to accept a mission to kill a mysterious Yuan stage practitioner. Everyone knew what Xiaochen's actions represented. Moreover, they also understood that once Xiaochen succeeded, the reputation of the East Sword Pavilion would rise greatly. Knowing how important this matter was, the elders did not dare to make a decision on their own, and could only report it to the Tsang Xian trio. Upon receiving the news, Tsang Xian, Sang Yun and Sang Wang soon appeared in the inner sect mission hall. Their gazes were complicated as they looked towards Xiaochen. Sang Xian was the first to speak. Chen you, Sang Xian wanted to persuade Xiaochen to reconsider, but when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he couldn't bring himself to say it. This was because even Sang Xian himself was eager to see Xiaochen grow up and become a hidden dragon of the East Sword Pavilion, and compete with Skyblade and the other 3. Xiaochen smiled faintly, knowing what Sang Xian wanted to say. Master, don't worry. I won't do something I'm not confident in. He gestured for Tsang Xian to rest assured. Upon hearing Tsang Xian's words, Sang Yun, as the pavilion master, decided. Then let's let Xiaochen give it a try. Let Qian go with him. If he can't beat him, Qian can kill him. In the end, he agreed to let Xiaochen give it a try. However, Qian had to accompany him along the way. This was also a way to protect Xiaochen. Upon hearing Sang Yun's words, Sang Wang agreed. After a moment of silence, Sang Xian also nodded in agreement. Soon after, Xiaochen finally chose a mission to kill the Poison Dragon Prince. The Poison Dragon Prince was at the initial mysterious Yuan stage. He had committed several family massacres in Tianfeng City, which was not far from the East Sword Pavilion. As a result, he was wanted by the East Sword Pavilion, and was sent to the Inner Sect Mission Hall. The initial mysterious Yuan stage cultivation was just right for Xiaochen. Moreover, Tianfeng City was not far from the East Sword Pavilion, so it would take at most 2 days for a round trip. After choosing the mission, Xiaochen rode on the Green Feather Eagle, accompanied by Qian, and rushed towards Tianfeng City. Not long after the 2 left the East Sword Pavilion, news of the #1 outer set disciple accepting the mission to kill the poison dragon prince quickly spread. For a time, the entire East Sword Pavilion was in an uproar. Is this kid trying to declare war on the 4 great hidden dragons? The 4 great hidden dragons all have records of killing mysterious Yuan stage practitioners. Xiao Chen is clearly doing this to prove to the world that the East Sword Pavilion also has its own hidden dragon. But will he succeed? Killing an enemy at a higher cultivation level is not something an ordinary genius can do. The difference between each cultivation level is like the difference between heaven and earth. In the entire Eastern Sun region, only the 4 great hidden dragons are able to kill an enemy at a higher cultivation level. Numerous disciples discussed. There were even some disciples who used various channels to borrow green feather eagles from the East Sword Pavilion and hastily rushed towards Tianfeng City. On this day, green feather eagles continuously flew out from the East Sword Pavilion. Several disciples or elders were seated on the back of each green feather eagle. Such a change confused the surrounding practitioners of the East Sword Pavilion. They did not know what the East Sword Pavilion was planning to do. So many disciples and elders were moving out together. Were they trying to start a war? They did not know that their decision had caused such a huge uproar in the East Sword Pavilion. No one knew that even the Tsang trio had secretly rushed to Tianfeng City at this time, though they did not show themselves. They wanted to see with their own eyes whether Xiao Chen was the hidden dragon that the East Sword Pavilion had been looking forward to. Xiao Chen arrived at Tianfeng City in only 6 to 8 hours after traveling at full speed. He did not know the exact location of the poisonous dragon prince, but before they set off, Zhang Xian had used the power of the East Sword Pavilion to help Xiao Chen find the poisonous dragon prince's location. At this time, as the two entered the city, the Tianfeng City Lord also informed Qi Yan of the news. It was naturally not difficult to find a person by mobilizing all the power of the East Sword Pavilion. After confirming the location of the poisonous dragon prince, the Tianfeng City Lord looked at Qi Yan and said, "When do you think we should make a move?" Tianfeng City was only a small city, so the city lord's cultivation was only at the beginning of the mysterious Yuan stage, the same as the poisonous dragon prince. It was because of this that he had asked the East Sword Pavilion for help. Otherwise, he would have killed the poisonous dragon prince himself. The city lord respectfully asked Qi Yan. As for Xiao Chen, an outer disciple who was only at the completion of the Yellow Realm, the city lord naturally ignored him. Ignoring the city lord, Qi Yan turned to Xiao Chen and said, "When do we make a move?" "Let's do it now." Since they didn't want to waste any time, they had to make their move now. Under the city lord's lead, the group arrived at an ordinary courtyard in the city. This was where young Master Venomous Jiao hid in Tianfeng City. From the outside, it looked no different from an ordinary house. "This is the residence of the poisonous dragon prince," the city lord said. "Junior brother, let's watch your performance." Hearing the city lord's words, Qi Yan smiled slightly and took a step back at the same time. Her meaning was obvious. She would not interfere. Seeing Qi Yan's actions, the city lord was a little confused. What was going on? Killing the poisonous dragon prince was not done by Qi Yan, an inner disciple, but by an outer disciple. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 38. The mayor glanced at Qi Yan, who had retreated to the side, and then looked at the indifferent Xiao Chen. The mayor felt that his brain was not enough to process the situation. What was the meaning of this? Sending an outer disciple to kill the poisonous dragon prince? Was this a suicide mission? The mayor could not be blamed for having such thoughts. It was simply impossible for a warrior of the Yellow Realm to kill a warrior of the mysterious Yuan realm. There were billions of people in the Dongyang region, but there were only 4 people who could kill a warrior of the mysterious Yuan realm at the Yellow Realm. They were the 4 hidden dragons. Out of billions of people, only 4 could do it. This showed how difficult it was. The difference between realms was substantial. Every breakthrough to a new realm could be said to be a sublimation of life. Therefore, to be able to kill an enemy of a higher realm was simply a miracle. Ignoring the mayor's shock, Xiaochen slowly walked to the front of the courtyard. He casually kicked the door open and strode into the courtyard. Following Xiaochen's entry, a man of about 30 years old walked out of the room. His skin was white and clean. At first glance, he really did look like a young master of an aristocratic family. "Who are you?" The man looked at Xiaochen with an unfriendly gaze and asked indifferently. Needless to say, the man's cultivation was at the beginning of the mysterious Yuan realm. Naturally, he was the poisonous dragon prince. With an indifferent smile on his face, Xiaochen replied, "The person who will kill you. You are a disciple of the Eastern Sword Pavilion?" Hearing Xiaochen's words, the poisonous dragon prince's expression changed slightly. The poisonous dragon prince already knew that the Eastern Sword Pavilion wanted him. However, he did not expect it to come so quickly. For a moment, he was lost in thought. After all, in front of the Eastern Sword Pavilion, he was just an ant that could be casually crushed. Any inner disciple could kill him. He had originally planned to leave Tianfeng City tonight, but he was still a step too late. There was a moment of panic in his heart, but soon, after sensing Xiaochen's cultivation, the poisonous dragon prince sneered. "Haha, are the people of the Eastern Sword Pavilion stupid? How dare they send a nobody at the completion of the Yellow Realm to kill me, haha." Mr. Poisonous Dragon was a little scared at first, but after realizing Xiaochen's cultivation, he could not help but sneer. Xiaochen was only at the completion of the Yellow Realm. How could such a nonentity want to kill him? At the same time, the Eastern Sword Pavilion's green feather eagles continuously flew over from the horizon. They quickly found Xiaochen and the Poison Dragon Prince. In a short span of a dozen breaths, there were over 30 green feather eagles circling above the Poison Dragon Prince's head. They did not land, but they also did not seem to have any intention of leaving. They simply circled in the air. Seeing that there were at least 5 Eastern Sword Pavilion disciples on each of the azure feather eagles, and there were even elders, Sir Poison Jiao's laughter came to an abrupt halt. His face instantly paled, and he could not help but curse in his heart. Mother Cur, has the Eastern Sword Pavilion gone mad? Over 100 disciples and more than 10 elders have been dispatched to capture me? The Poison Dragon Prince's face paled as he thought that these people were all here to capture him. Under such a lineup, even if he was an Earth Mirror or a Celestial Realm warrior, he would not be able to escape, let alone a mysterious Yuan Realm warrior. He could not understand why the Eastern Sword Pavilion would dispatch such a powerful lineup just for nobody like him. Weren't they thinking too highly of him? However, the Poison Dragon Prince did not know that these people were not here to kill him. They were here to see with their own eyes whether Xiaochen was the hidden dragon that the Eastern Sword Pavilion had been waiting for. Seeing through the Poison Dragon Prince's thoughts, Xiaochen's face was calm. He unsheathed his Qingyun sword and pointed it at the ground. "Don't be afraid, they will not attack you. Your only opponent is me. Defeat me and I will let you go today." In order to prevent the Poison Dragon Prince from being afraid and not being willing to fight with all his strength, Xiaochen made a special promise. Hearing this, the Poison Dragon Prince's face became even more confused. What was going on? They had dispatched so many people, but in the end, they only sent a nobody at the completion of the Yellow Realm. Were they toying with him? At first, he thought that the Eastern Sword Pavilion was toying with him, but there was no reason. With the Eastern Sword Pavilion status in the Eastern Sun region, what reason did they have to play with a nobody at the beginning of the mysterious Yuan realm? He could not figure it out, so he stared at Xiaochen. After a while, the Poison Dragon Prince understood. Xiaochen's cultivation was at the completion of the Yellow Realm. In other words, he was an outer disciple of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. In this way, combined with the overall situation of the Eastern Sun region, the only explanation was that he was using himself to prove that there was a hidden dragon in the Eastern Sword Pavilion. This was the reason. Otherwise, how could there be so many disciples and elders present? They were all here to witness this moment. After figuring everything out, the Poison Dragon Prince's face gradually calmed down. He looked at Xiaochen and said word by word, "The 4 hidden dragons of the Eastern Sun region all have the record of killing a warrior at the mysterious Yuan realm. However, the Eastern Sword Pavilion has never had a hidden dragon. Today, you are here to prove to the world through me that the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion is about to be born, right?" "Yes." Facing the Poison Dragon Prince's question, Xiaochen did not hide anything and simply replied. Hearing Xiaochen's answer, the Poison Dragon Prince's face darkened. He then asked, "You just said that as long as I defeat you, I can leave?" "That's right. I can make this decision. As long as you can defeat me, I will let you leave today. As for whether you can escape the Eastern Sword Pavilion's wanted list in the future, that will depend on your own ability," Xiaochen said. "That's what you said." Xiaochen's words seemed to have given the Poison Dragon Prince a reassurance. Immediately, a mysterious Yuan realm spiritual energy fluctuation spread out from the Poison Dragon Prince's body. The battle was about to begin. The group of disciples and elders in the sky held their breaths as they watched everything below. They did not know whether the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion would appear today, or whether everything was just an illusion or a castle in the air. The battle was about to erupt. At the same time, the matter in Tianfeng City quickly spread to the ears of the other 4 giants. Spies from the 4 giants constantly rushed to Tianfeng City to pass on the news. "Heavens, the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion is about to be born. Quickly pass on the news back to the sect." What hidden dragon? It's already been 3 years and there are no signs of the hidden dragon appearing. Now, it suddenly appeared. Let's kill the Poison Dragon Prince first. No matter what, this is a big matter. We must pass on the news as soon as possible. Damn, why the hell did you send a carrier pigeon? By the time the carrier pigeon flies back, it'll be too late. Just use a sound transmission talisman. The spies of the 4 giants constantly sent news back to the sect. In order to let the sect receive the news as soon as possible, they didn't hesitate to use sound transmission talismans. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 39. At this moment, it could be said that the eyes of the entire Dongyang region were locked on Tianfeng City. Under everyone's gaze, Xiaochen and the poisonous dragon prince finally attacked at the same time and immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The battle broke out. At the same time, the Blood Demon Hall, Myriad Immortal House, Leshan Prefecture, and Fire Cloud Sect, the 4 great heads, also received news from their spies. They heard that a hidden dragon was about to appear in the Eastern Sword Pavilion. For a time, the upper echelons of the 4 great heads paid close attention. There's been no news for 3 years, but a hidden dragon suddenly appeared today. This East Sword Pavilion. The Blood Demon Hall Master said. Could it be that the East Sword Pavilion hid their hidden dragon for 3 years? Only today did they release him? The Myriad Immortal House Master said. Xiaochen, who is this Xiaochen? Go and find out everything about him. I want to know everything about him, from the moment he was born until now, the chief of the Leshan Prefecture said. Back then, there was a sign that the 5 dragons of our Eastern Sun region would rise together. 3 years have passed, but no hidden dragon has appeared in the East Sword Pavilion. This old man thought that there was a deviation. I didn't expect that the East Sword Pavilion would make such a big move today. Pass down my order. Pay close attention to Xiaochen. Report to me immediately if there's anything related to Xiaochen, the Fire Cloud Sect Master said. The sect masters of the 4 giants fixed their gazes on Xiaochen. Apart from the top figures of the older generation, the 4 hidden dragons also received the news. On a mountain peak of the Blood Demon Hall, a young man was practicing his blade technique. At this moment, a purple-clothed beauty rushed over. Looking at the young man, she said in shock, "Senior brother, the hidden dragon of the East Sword Pavilion has appeared." The young man was the Blood Demon Hall's hidden dragon Heavenly Blade. After learning about Xiaochen, the purple-clothed beauty rushed over immediately. Hearing this, Heavenly Blade's face didn't change at all, as if he had expected it. I knew that you would become the true dragon of the East Sword Pavilion sooner or later. Because without you, the East Sword Pavilion's foundation would collapse within 10 years. There was not the slightest bit of shock. The same scene also occurred in the Myriad Immortal Tower, Leshan Prefecture, and Fire Cloud Sect. Has the Eastern Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon finally arrived? It seems interesting. However, everything will have to wait until he kills young noble venomous dragon. Hidden Dragon Muqing of the 10,000 Immortal House said with a smile after hearing the news. Sister, are you saying that this Xiaochen is the person who came to our Xanadu? Within the Leshan Prefecture, Hidden Dragon Lin Xing and Wan Er sat across from each other. Lin Xing looked at his sister and asked. At that time, I already told you that this person wasn't simple. I wanted you to go with me to the death arena to take a look, but you refused. Naturally, it was him. Hearing Lin Xing's words, Wan Er smiled. It doesn't matter. If he really is the hidden dragon of the East Sword Pavilion, we will have the opportunity to meet him in the future. However, if he's just a facade, then there's no point in meeting him. Hearing Wan Er's reply, Lin Xing faintly smiled. Within the Fire Cloud Sect, within a blazing mountain valley, a young man wrapped in raging flames slowly walked out. Just as he walked out of the valley, a Fire Cloud Sect attendant quickly walked up to the young man and said with a shocked expression, "Young master, the East Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon has appeared." Oh? Is the news accurate? Hearing the attendant's words, the young man asked. It's absolutely true. After 3 years, the East Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon has finally appeared? Interesting. Get ready. I'm going to the Sword Demon Mountain Range and personally see just how strong the East Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon is. A faint smile hung on the young man's face as he said. The young man was naturally the Fire Cloud Sect's hidden dragon, Zhao Weiyun. After hearing the news about Xiaochen, he immediately prepared to go to the Sword Demon Mountain Range and personally see just what kind of person the East Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon was. The 4 great hidden dragons of the Eastern Sun region had been bored for too long. With their talent, people of the same generation, even experts of the older generation, simply couldn't enter their eyes. This was because no matter how much their current strength surpassed theirs, in their hearts, it wouldn't take long for them to catch up. Therefore, in the entire Eastern Sun region, the only people that could make them pay attention to were each other. However, there were only 4 of them, and they had been tit for tat for several years. They had long since grown tired of it. At this time, the East Sword Pavilion, which had been quiet all this time, suddenly had a hidden dragon appear, which naturally aroused the interest of the 4 great hidden dragons. The entire Eastern Sun region was in an uproar, but the most important thing was still in Tianfeng City. This was because Xiaochen could only preliminarily prove that he had the potential to be a hidden dragon after killing a mysterious Yuan realm warrior. Before the outcome of the battle was clear, everything was just empty talk. After more than 100 fierce moves, it had to be said that the battle power of a mysterious Yuan realm warrior was indeed far superior to that of a Yellow realm warrior. The 2 sides were not at the same level at all. He didn't have the slightest advantage, but there were no signs of him losing either. After more than 100 fierce moves, Xiaochen and the poisonous dragon prince could be said to be evenly matched. Although the outcome of the battle was not clear, it was already amazing enough. A warrior at the completion of the Yellow Realm could actually fight a warrior at the beginning of the mysterious Yuan Realm for more than 100 moves without being at a disadvantage. This was already hard for the crowd to accept. Under normal circumstances, even Wang Hu from the outer sect would not be able to last more than a few moves against the poisonous dragon prince. However, Xiaochen was still undefeated after more than 100 moves. Many disciples and elders of the Sword Pavilion in the sky were excited when they saw the 2 of them fighting. Some of the older elders even had tears streaming down their cheeks as they spoke. A warrior at the Yellow Realm can fight a warrior at the mysterious Yuan Realm without being defeated. He is the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. He is the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. The outcome of the battle was not clear yet, but some elders had already admitted that Xiaochen was the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. This was because in the entire Eastern Sword Pavilion, no one could do what Xiaochen had done. Even those core disciples could not compete with a warrior at the mysterious Yuan realm when they were at the Yellow realm. Some people were excited because of Xiaochen. Naturally, there were also people who tried to undermine him. A few disciples and elders said with jealousy, "Humph, it has already been more than 100 moves. Is this considered a hidden dragon? I heard that when the 4 real dragons killed a warrior at the mysterious Yuan realm, it only took a moment. It seems that there is still a gap between Xiaochen and the 4 real dragons. That's enough. Xiaochen is only at the completion of the Yellow realm. If he breaks through to the completion of the Yellow realm, I believe that he can also kill a warrior at the mysterious Yuan realm in a flash." Hearing these people's jealousy and ridicule, most people immediately retorted. It had to be said that the narrow-minded people were in the minority. More disciples and elders sincerely hoped that the Eastern Sword Pavilion could become stronger. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 40. Most people still hope that the East Sword Pavilion could have its own hidden dragon. After all, the current situation was like this. If you didn't have a hidden dragon, you could only be suppressed by others until you were kicked out in the end. The people in the sky nervously watched the battle below. At the same time, Xiaochen, who was in the middle of a fierce battle, suddenly took the initiative to retreat. Seeing Xiaochen take the initiative to retreat, everyone frowned. He was clearly not at a disadvantage, so why did Xiaochen retreat? Could it be that he couldn't kill the poisonous dragon prince? They didn't understand why Xiaochen suddenly retreated, but soon Xiaochen gave them an answer. After pulling away from the poisonous dragon prince, Xiaochen shook his numb arm and said softly, "Yes, the power of a mysterious Yuan realm warrior is indeed much stronger than that of a Yellow realm warrior, but that's all. The game ends here. It's time to send you on your way, the game ends here." In Xiaochen's eyes, the fierce battle of more than 100 moves was just a game. Hearing this, the poisonous dragon prince's face darkened and he shouted angrily, "Boy, be careful of your tongue. I admit that I can't do anything to you, but you can't do anything to me either. At most, we'll both be injured. Don't brag here." In the fierce battle of more than 100 moves, Xiaochen's strength had indeed shocked the poisonous dragon prince. However, he knew that Xiaochen couldn't kill him because Xiaochen's combat power wasn't enough to kill him. Ignoring the poisonous dragon prince's angry shout, Xiaochen smiled and said as if he was talking to himself, "I heard that the 4 hidden dragons didn't take more than 10 moves to kill a mysterious Yuan realm warrior. However, my cultivation hasn't reached the completion of the Yellow realm, so I'm afraid I can't kill you within 10 moves. Fine, I'll finish you within 30 moves." Like Tiandao and Mu Qing, the 4 hidden dragons, it took them less than 10 moves to kill mysterious Yuan realm warriors. However, their cultivations had already reached the completion of the Yellow realm. Xiaochen, on the other hand, was only at the completion of the Yellow realm, 1 realm lower than them. Therefore, Xiaochen admitted that he could not kill the poisonous dragon prince within 10 moves. He calmly admitted that he couldn't do it like the other 4 hidden dragons, but these words still made the poisonous dragon prince completely angry. What did he mean? He wanted to kill him within 30 moves? Bullshit! If that was the case, then what was the previous fierce battle? A warm-up? The fury in his eyes seemed to be about to burst. If looks could kill, Xiaochen would have died hundreds of times over. Ignoring the poisonous dragon prince's murderous gaze, Xiaochen's body was surrounded by sword qi at the level of small success. Feeling the sword qi, the poisonous dragon prince's face changed. Xiaochen didn't use sword qi just now. Sword qi at the level of small success, you. The poisonous dragon prince didn't expect Xiaochen to still be holding back. Moreover, sword qi at the level of small success was enough to pose a fatal threat to him. Looking at Xiaochen, the poisonous dragon prince's face turned ugly. The sword qi at the level of small success made the poisonous dragon prince's face change greatly. However, it was impossible to kill him within 30 moves with just this, unless Xiaochen had other tricks up his sleeve. But was that possible? Besides sword chi, did Xiaochen have other tricks up his sleeve? Facing the indifferent and confident Xiaochen, the poisonous dragon prince felt even more uncertain. The youth in front of him was like a bottomless pit, he would never know where his limit was. If I can't kill you within 30 moves, I'll let you go. First move. Not giving the poisonous dragon prince a chance, Xiaochen indifferently said. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaochen took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the poisonous dragon prince. Seeing this, the poisonous dragon prince subconsciously said, so fast, he didn't see Xiaochen's movements at all. Not only him, but all the elders and disciples in the air were also stunned. Then, they said in shock, high-rank movement skill, 7-star steps, and it's even at the perfection stage. After using the 7-star steps, Xiaochen directly stuck to the poisonous dragon prince. Then, the situation of the battle was completely reversed. The poisonous dragon prince, who was originally evenly matched with Xiaochen, was instantly suppressed by Xiaochen. The poisonous dragon prince was completely suppressed. At the same time, seeing the sword techniques in Xiaochen's hands constantly changing, the elders and disciples of the Eastern Sword Pavilion were unable to remain calm. Shadow Sword Strike, Blazing Sword Technique, 5 Mountain Sword Technique, a total of 10 high-rank martial skills had reached the perfection stage. At the age of 19, Xiaochen had already cultivated 10 upper-class martial arts techniques to the transformative level. In other words, on average, it only took Xiaochen a little more than a month to go from the beginner level to the transformative level for each martial art technique. What kind of concept was this? An ordinary Eastern Sword Pavilion disciple would need at least half a year to cultivate a high-rank martial skill from the entry level to the perfection stage. But Xiaochen only needed a little more than a month. 10 superior martial skills, all of which have reached the transformative realm. How did he do it? Even the elders couldn't believe what they were seeing. Not only them, but Zhang Xian and the other two also couldn't believe it. At this time, Zhang Yun looked at Zhang Xian and smiled. Senior brother, to be able to cultivate 10 high-rank martial skills to the perfection stage in a year, this kid's understanding of the sword Dao is probably not inferior to an ordinary inner sect disciple. Chen Zhang Yun was shocked, but also very gratified. Hearing his words, Zhang Xian fell into a daze. He didn't think that Xiaochen's growth in a year would actually reach such a level. Even Zhang Xian found it hard to imagine. But thinking about it, if he wanted to compete with the 4 great hidden dragons, he would have to achieve this. After all, none of the 4 great hidden dragons were easy to deal with. 10 perfection stage high-rank martial skills were switched back and forth. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, a scene that made everyone's blood boil finally appeared. They saw Xiaochen's sword flick, and the poisonous dragon prince's head directly flew into the air. Dead. He had successfully killed the poisonous dragon prince. In just 27 moves, he had killed the poisonous dragon prince, who was at the initial mysterious Yuan stage. Everyone fell into a daze. This scene, the entire Eastern Sword Pavilion had been waiting for this scene for 3 whole years. In these 3 years, the Blood Demon Palace, Leshan Prefecture, Myriad Immortal House, and Fire Cloud Sect had all welcomed their own hidden dragons. And under the radiance of the 4 great hidden dragons, all the disciples of the Eastern Sword Pavilion appeared dim and dull. And today, after 3 years of waiting, the Eastern Sword Pavilion had finally welcomed their own hidden dragon. Under the radiance of the 4 great hidden dragons, the Eastern Sword Pavilion also erupted with their own radiance. All the elders and disciples of the Eastern Sword Pavilion were incomparably excited as they stared at the white-clothed figure standing proudly with a sword in his hand. Success, he had really succeeded. Xiaochen had crossed an entire realm and successfully killed the poisonous dragon prince. The hidden dragon of my Eastern Sword Pavilion has finally appeared. A white-haired elder was so emotional that tears flowed down his face. His body trembled as he faced the sky and let out a long howl. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 41. After killing the young noble poison dragon in 27 moves, Xiaochen slowly sheathed his sword before turning around and returning to Qian's side with a smile. "Let's go." There was not much excitement in his voice. It was as if this was how it should be. Hearing Xiaochen's words, Qian took a while to come back to her senses. Then, she replied with an "oh" and left with Xiaochen. He had finally appeared. Although Xiaochen hadn't fought with the other 4 hidden dragons, it was undeniable that Xiaochen had done something no one else in the East Sword Pavilion could do, and that was to kill an enemy who was a whole realm higher. This was also the most direct proof of the potential of a hidden dragon. As for whether Xiaochen would be a match for the other 4 hidden dragons, time would tell. Under the gazes of many disciples and elders filled with excitement and worship, he left. At the same time, the news of this matter quickly spread to the other 4 heads. Hearing that Xiaochen had actually managed to kill the venomous dragon prince despite being at a higher cultivation level than him, the 4 leaders' faces all became serious. The East Sword Pavilion had finally produced a hidden dragon. "Senior brother, aren't you surprised at all? That Xiaochen really killed the young noble poison dragon." In the Blood Demon Hall, the purple-clothed beauty looked at Skyblade with a gloomy expression. Skyblade's expression towards the news of Xiaochen was too calm, as if he had already known about it. Regarding this, the purple-clothed beauty was somewhat dissatisfied and said with a pout. After hearing the purple-clothed beauty's words, Skyblade faintly smiled and said, "He is the East Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon, and only he can stand up against the 4 of us. Therefore, the outcome has long been decided." After knowing that Xiaochen had killed the young noble poison dragon, Mu Qing and Lin Xing, who were in the Myriad Immortals House in Leshan Prefecture respectively, said with a faint smile, "The 5 hidden dragons? Interesting. It looks like this Sword Demon Mountain range is worth a trip. Let's see if this hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion is a match for Tian Dao." After confirming that Xiaochen had killed the poisoned Jiao Prince, Lin Xing and Mu Qing prepared to personally head to the Sword Demon Mountain range to witness the great battle between the 2 great hidden dragons. Originally, if Xiaochen had not appeared out of nowhere, Mu Qing, Lin Xing and Zhao Wuying would definitely not have paid attention to the Sword Demon Mountain range. After all, in their eyes, a Eastern Sword Pavilion without a hidden dragon was not worthy of their attention. Moreover, when Skyblade took action, no one in the Eastern Sword Pavilion's outer court could stop him. However, things were different now. Xiaochen's appearance meant that the Eastern Sword Pavilion had its own hidden dragon. The battle between the 2 dragons was naturally worth their attention. Moreover, Xiaochen had just appeared and they wanted to personally confirm whether Xiaochen had the qualifications to be ranked with them as the 5 hidden dragons of the Eastern Sun region. In other words, from today onwards, the Eastern Sun region would have 5 hidden dragons, or would it still have 4 hidden dragons? Xiaochen's name could be said to have spread among the 5 great leaders. Even the ordinary disciples had heard of the news that a hidden dragon had appeared in the Eastern Sword Pavilion. It was worth mentioning that Chen Muxue, who had been accepted as a disciple by the beautiful woman in the Myriad Immortals House, had also heard of this news. After entering the Myriad Immortals House and being accepted as a disciple by an elder, Chen Muxue could be said to have leaped over the Dragon Gate. Moreover, after activating her seductive bone, Chen Muxue became even more charming and was even rated as one of the 3 great beauties of the Myriad Immortals House. Originally, Chen Muxue thought that she could completely crush Xiaochen, and the flames of revenge in her heart burned fiercely. However, after hearing the news about Xiaochen, Chen Muxue was dumbfounded. How could this be? Hidden dragon. Chen Muxue, who had joined the Myriad Immortal Tower, knew very well what this word represented. Take their Myriad Immortal Tower's hidden dragon Mu Qing as an example. In the entire Myriad Immortal Tower, his status was only slightly lower than the sect master. Even the core disciples had to be polite to him. It was no exaggeration to say that as long as one was rated as a hidden dragon, it represented the hope of a sect. In her residence, Chen Muxue kept shaking her head and comforting herself. Impossible, it can't be him. It should be someone with the same name. Yes, it must be like this. How long has it been since he entered the Eastern Sword Pavilion? It can't be him. She was unwilling to accept this fact. Before seeing Xiaochen with her own eyes, Chen Muxue would rather die than believe that Xiaochen would become the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. She kept reminding herself. At this moment, a handsome young man slowly walked into Chen Muxue's room. Looking at Chen Muxue, who was in a daze, the young man revealed a smile. Then, he carried Chen Muxue to the bed. Chen Muxue didn't struggle in the young man's arms. This young man was called Wang Wen and was Chen Muxue's backer in the Myriad Immortals house. At the same time, Wang Wen was also Mu Qing's trusted aide. It was also because of Wang Wen's high status in the Myriad Immortals house that Chen Muxue was willing to give herself to him. "Senior brother, you promised to accompany me back to the Mountain Ridge County. When are we leaving? Let's wait a little longer. A hidden dragon has appeared in the Eastern Sword Pavilion. Senior brother Mu Qing wants to go to the Sword Demon Mountain Range personally. He asked me to accompany him and wait for me to return. Don't worry, Muxue, I will help you destroy a small family in the Mountain Ridge County. Even the Eastern Sword Pavilion won't dare to say anything." Wang Wen was completely captivated by Chen Muxue. That was why he had promised to help her destroy the Xiao family. He knew that someone from the Xiao family had entered the Eastern Sword Pavilion. But in Wang Wen's opinion, with his status by Mu Qing's side, even if the Eastern Sword Pavilion knew about it, they wouldn't dare to say anything. Of course, in Wang Wen's heart, he only thought that Xiaochen was an ordinary disciple of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. He didn't know that Xiaochen was now the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. After hearing Wang Wen's promise, Chen Muxue smiled charmingly and took the initiative to wrap her arms around Wang Wen's neck. Then, the two of them, unaware of Chen Muxue's situation, after returning to the Eastern Sword Pavilion, Xiaochen didn't care about the changes in the outside world. Even though there were countless people requesting to see him every day, unless it was necessary, Xiaochen wouldn't meet anyone. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. After 3 days of fermenting, the battle between the Eastern Sword Pavilion and the Blood Demon Hall in the Sword Demon Mountain Range attracted countless attention due to the emergence of the Eastern Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon. After all, this was the first time the Eastern Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon clashed with the Blood Demon Hall's hidden dragon. On the day of departure, this time, Zhang Xian led the team. There weren't many people. There were only 3 disciples, Xiaochen, Qian, and Qin Heng. Apart from them, there were only 4 elders accompanying them. There were a total of 8 people. Riding on 2 green-feathered eagles, Xiaochen and the others soared into the sky. At the same time, flying monsters also soared into the sky from the Blood Demon Hall, Leshan Prefecture, Myriad Immortal House, and Fire Cloud Sect. Their destination was the Sword Demon Mountain Range. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 42. Due to Xiaochen's sudden appearance, the battle in the Sword Demon Mountain Range that no one had paid attention to had now become the center of attention. The gathering of the 5 great hidden dragons was indeed enough to attract everyone's attention. Of course, it was still too early to talk about the 5 great hidden dragons. After all, Xiaochen had just made a name for himself, and it was still unknown how his strength compared to the other 4 great hidden dragons. However, it would not be long before the results would be known. This time, Xiaochen would be facing the Blood Demon Hall's hidden dragon Heavenly Blade. As long as Xiaochen could contend against the Heavenly Blade, it would prove that Xiaochen truly had the potential to be a hidden dragon. Riding on the green feather eagle, Xiaochen's group arrived at the Sword Demon Mountain Range 2 days later. A huge mountain range stretched across the land for an unknown number of miles. This mountain range was the border between the Eastern Sword Pavilion and the Blood Demon Hall. The Eastern Sword Pavilion's sphere of influence was to the east of the mountain range, while the Blood Demon Hall's sphere of influence was to the south of the mountain range. They slowly landed on the tallest mountain peak. There were already dozens of Eastern Sword Pavilion's inner disciples in attendance waiting there. Moreover, they had already set up a viewing platform and a huge battle arena. Of course, it was not only the Eastern Sword Pavilion that was present, but the Blood Demon Hall was also present. After Xiao Chen's group appeared, the Eastern Sword Pavilion's crowd stepped forward. They first bowed to Zhang Xian, before their gazes were fixed on Xiao Chen. They naturally knew about what had happened in Tianfeng City. After learning that Xiao Chen was already a hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion, everyone was naturally curious. At the same time, a look of worship appeared in their eyes as they looked at Xiao Chen. In this world, the strong were respected. Although Xiao Chen was still young and his cultivation was very low, since he was a hidden dragon, he naturally could not be judged by common sense. Perhaps in a few years, Xiao Chen would catch up to them, and even reach a height that they could only look up to. Xiao Chen's expression was calm in the face of the crowd's attention. At the same time, the people from the Blood Demon Hall had also arrived. The person in charge of leading the group this time around was the second hall master of the Blood Demon Hall. There were not many people in the group. Other than the 3 disciples participating in the battle, there were also 4 elders in the group. The number of people was the same as the Eastern Sword Pavilion. As soon as the Blood Devil Hall appeared, everyone stopped chatting and shifted their attention to the group of people from the Blood Devil Hall. When Xiao Chen spotted a young man who was about the same age as him, he was taken aback and muttered softly, "Qianling." That's right, Xiao Chen saw Qianling's figure amongst the crowd from the Blood Demon Hall. Sensing Xiao Chen's gaze, Qianling faintly smiled and took the initiative to approach Xiao Chen. A faint smile hung on his face as he spoke. "We meet again, you are the hidden dragon of the Blood Demon Hall, Tian Dao?" Looking at Qianling, Xiao Chen quickly guessed his identity and said somewhat gloomily. In fact, he should have guessed that in the entire Eastern Sun region, other than the 4 hidden dragons, who else could be on par with him? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qianling smiled and nodded. At the same time, Qin Heng, who was standing by the side, saw that the 2 of them actually knew each other and said with a smile, "Why? Do you know each other?" "Yes, we are very good friends." Hearing Qin Heng's words, Xiao Chen did not hide anything and replied. During the 5 months of training in the Thousand Demon Mountain range together, Xiao Chen and Qianling indeed got along very well. Regarding this, there was naturally no need to hide anything. It was truly unexpected that Tian Dao was actually Qianling. Just as the crowd was conversing, a 27 or 28-year-old man slowly walked over from the Blood Demon Hall side. His gaze first glanced at Qin Heng, then landed on Xiao Chen's body, as he spoke with a cold smile. "You are the hidden dragon that suddenly appeared in the Eastern Sword Pavilion? I think you are here to deceive people. If you can become a hidden dragon, then I'm afraid my junior brother is a real dragon." His words were full of sarcasm. This person was a core disciple of the Blood Demon Hall and also Qin Heng's opponent this time. Hearing his words, Xiao Chen looked at him indifferently, then asked Qianling indifferently, "Who is he?" There is no need to pay attention to irrelevant people. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qianling also indifferently replied. He did not put this person in his eyes at all. Whether it was Xiao Chen or Qianling, they directly chose to ignore him. Even though he was a core disciple of the Blood Demon Hall, in front of 2 hidden dragons, he was really not enough. In the entire Dongyang region, there were only hidden dragons in the eyes of the hidden dragons. The others were not worthy of their attention, because these people simply could not keep up with the hidden dragon's footsteps and would be left behind very quickly. Even if they could be opponents for a while, that was all there was to it. After hearing the words of Xiao Chen and Qianling clearly, the face of the core disciple of the Blood Demon Hall instantly darkened. His gaze was fixed on Xiao Chen, then he coldly glanced at Qianling. His heart was burning with anger, but in the end, he suppressed it and did not flare up. There was no other way. Even though the 2 of them were only at the Yellow Realm and were much weaker than him, this was only temporary. It would not be long before the 2 of them caught up. Moreover, as a hidden dragon, Qianling's position in the Blood Demon Hall was naturally far from what he could compare with. He could not be disrespectful to Qianling. As for Xiao Chen, although Xiao Chen was not a disciple of the Blood Demon Hall, he could not attack Xiao Chen. This was because killing a hidden dragon in public was definitely something that would not end until one of them was dead. There were a total of 5 hidden dragons in the Dongyang region, and each of them represented the hope of a giant. If you extinguished their hope, they would naturally dare to fight you to the death. Forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart, he did not dare to flare up. At the same time, the other 3 giants also appeared. First, it was the Yeshan Prefecture, then the Fire Cloud Sect, and finally the Myriad Immortals House. The 5 giants had gathered, and each of them had a giant figure holding the line. Moreover, each of their hidden dragons had also appeared. Mu Qing, Lin Xing, and Zhao Wuyun. With the appearance of these 3 hidden dragons, the 5 hidden dragons of the Dongyang region could be considered to have gathered together. Needless to say, their gazes were naturally locked onto Xiao Chen. As for the others, they were obviously ignored by them. Without the slightest hesitation, the 3 of them stepped forward almost at the same time, arriving beside Xiao Chen and Chen Ling. The 5 of them each took a side, forming a circle. This circle belonged to the 5 hidden dragons, and the core disciple of the Blood Demon Hall who was in the middle of the circle was clearly an eyesore. As expected, Zhao Wuyun glanced at the core disciple and said indifferently, "Who do you think you are? Get out." He did not show any mercy. In Zhao Wuyun's view, this place belonged to the 5 hidden dragons. Even if you were a core disciple, you were not qualified to sneak in. If any Tom, Dick, or Harry could sneak into the circle of the 5 hidden dragons, then the value of the 5 hidden dragons would be too low. Facing Zhao Wuyun's reprimand, the core disciple's eyes were about to spit fire. However, in the end, he chose to leave without saying a word, leaving the space for the 5 arrogant fellows. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 43. With the 5 hidden dragons gathered together, the atmosphere became somewhat oppressive. Even Song Xian and the other heavyweights consciously chose to leave and sit down on the spectator stand, allowing the 5 little guys to confront each other. The heavyweights had no intention of interfering, and the oppressive atmosphere also made the surrounding disciples, deacons, and elders unconsciously step back. For a moment, there was no one around Xiao Chen and the other 4. Looking at the 5 hidden dragons staring at each other, the disciples of the East Sword Pavilion whispered among themselves, "My God, Skyblade Chen Ling, Viper Mu Qing, Tyrant Spear Lin Xing, and Sky Flame Zhao Wuyun. The 4 hidden dragons are actually gathered together. This is the first time I've seen the 4 hidden dragons at such a close distance." The disciple who spoke was already an inner disciple of the East Sword Pavilion, but he still couldn't help showing a longing look in front of Chen Ling and the other 3. The 4 hidden dragons were figures that all the younger generation in the Eastern Sun region worshipped. His face was full of worship, but after hearing his words, another inner disciple of the East Sword Pavilion added, "Junior brother, this is not the era of the 4 hidden dragons, but the 5 hidden dragons. Don't forget that there's also our East Sword Pavilion Xiao Chen. See for yourself, standing together with the other 4 hidden dragons, Xiao Chen doesn't seem weak at all." Not knowing if it was because he was too excited or because he didn't react in time, this disciple actually forgot about Xiao Chen. After hearing his senior brother's reminder, he turned to look at Xiao Chen. In terms of aura, even the core disciples were weaker in front of Chen Ling and the other 3, but Xiao Chen didn't. Standing opposite the other 4 hidden dragons, Xiao Chen's face was still as indifferent as water, and his white robe fluttered in the wind. He didn't seem weak at all. He was not the only one staring at Xiao Chen. Even the deacons and elders of the East Sword Pavilion could not help but look at Xiao Chen at that moment. In the past, whenever the 4 hidden dragons gathered, the Eastern Sword Pavilion could only stand to the side because there was not a single disciple in the pavilion who could stand together with the 4 hidden dragons. It was a very mysterious feeling and there was no way to explain it. It was as though the 4 hidden dragons possessed a unique aura of power. This aura of power had nothing to do with cultivation bases. Even if a Sky Human Stage Elder were to stand beside the 4 of them, one would think that the Elder was naturally weaker than the 4 hidden dragons. It had been 3 years. Every time the 4 great hidden dragons gathered, No one from the Eastern Sword Pavilion could stand up against them. However, the situation today was different. In front of the 4 great hidden dragons, someone from the Eastern Sword Pavilion finally stood up. Moreover, this person was not inferior to the 4 great hidden dragons in the slightest. They looked at each other. However, most of the time, Qianling and the other three's gazes landed on Xiaochen. They did not speak for a long while. In the end, it was Zhao Wuyan who was the first to open his mouth and speak. That's right. The Eastern Sword Pavilion finally has a hidden dragon. It was just a sentence, but the meaning behind it was very clear. After seeing Xiaochen with his own eyes, Zhao Wuyan could be considered to have acknowledged Xiaochen's hidden dragon potential. Although they had not fought and did not know how strong Xiaochen was, Zhao Wuyan could be sure that Xiaochen was not weaker than the 4 of them. He was fully qualified to be the 5th hidden dragon in the Eastern Sun region. When Zhao Wuyan said this, Lin Xing smiled and did not say anything. Instead, it was Mu Qing who said indifferently, "Zhao Wuyan, I'm afraid it's still too early to make a conclusion. Let him fight with Qianling first." "Ah, Mu Qing, do you know why you've always been at the bottom among the 4 of us? It's because you don't have the confidence to fight against the heavens and earth. The truth is clearly in front of you, but you still don't want to admit it. Why? Are you afraid that Xiaochen's appearance will push you to the bottom again? Ah, if you don't even have this bit of confidence, I really don't know how you're worthy of the hidden dragon potential." Hearing Mu Qing's words, Lin Xing laughed disdainfully. Although the 4 great hidden dragons didn't have a clear ranking, the 4 of them were very clear about their strengths. Qianling, Zhao Wuyan, and Lin Xing were about the same level, while Mu Qing was always slightly weaker than the 3 of them. Therefore, Mu Qing had always been ranked at the bottom of the 4 great hidden dragons. Hearing Lin Xing's words, Mu Qing's face immediately sank. She looked at Lin Xing and said coldly, "Lin Xing, I dare you to say it again, why? You still want to fight with me? You think I don't dare?" The 2 of them were at loggerheads and immediately had the intention to fight. However, just as Mu Qing's voice fell, Xiaochen, who had been silent all this while, said indifferently, "All right, go to the side if you want to fight. Don't disturb me. The match is about to begin." Xiaochen did not care about the anger in Mu Qing's eyes in the slightest. After saying those words, Xiaochen turned around and walked towards the battle stage. Seeing that, Mu Qing's face became gloomy. As for Lin Xing and Zhao Wuyan, they only lightly smiled. After that, the 3 of them did not say anything. They leaped onto the stage and each found a chair to sit on. Sitting on the chair, Mu Qing's gaze was still locked onto Xiaochen. Her eyes flickered with an ice-cold glint. "Let me see if you're a hidden dragon or a false dragon." Clearly, Mu Qing was extremely displeased with Xiaochen's actions. Upon hearing his words, Lin Xing once again let out a disdainful smile. This Mu Qing, in terms of talent, did indeed have the potential of a hidden dragon. However, his temperament was too poor. Moreover, he was too narrow-minded. If this continued, it would be difficult for Mu Qing to achieve great things. Ignoring Mu Qing, the 5 hidden dragons separated. On the stage, Song Xian and the second hall master of the Blood Demon Hall looked at each other and announced the start of the match. With a brand new spiritual vein as the stake, there would be a total of 3 matches. 3 against 2, and the first match was the main event, the battle between Xiaochen and Qianling. No one expected that the battle between Xiaochen and Qianling would be the first match. However, after thinking about it, this was normal. After all, the outcome of the battle between the 2 would affect the ownership of the spiritual vein. Letting the 2 of them decide the victor in the first match would cause the loser to bear a huge psychological pressure, while the victor would be able to follow up with another attack. The order of the matches was decided by the Blood Demon Hall, and Song Xian was very clear about it. If not for Xiaochen, Song Xian would not have agreed to such an order. This was because once the first match was lost, the pressure on Qin Heng and Qi Yan would increase infinitely, which would be extremely disadvantageous for the East Sword Pavilion. However, now that Xiaochen had appeared, Song Xian was very curious to see if Xiao Chen could contend against Heavenly Blade Qianling. At the same time, he also wanted to confirm if Xiao Chen could become the hope of the East Sword Pavilion, and lead the East Sword Pavilion to resist the threat of the 4 hidden dragons. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 44. The first battle was the highly anticipated Battle of the Hidden Dragon. As soon as the second Lord of the Blood Demon Palace finished speaking, Xiao Chen and Qianling both jumped onto the fighting ring. I didn't expect to fight you so soon. The two of them stood facing each other. Looking at Xiao Chen, Qianling said with a smile. I also didn't expect you to be Tian Dao. You really hid it from me in the Demon's Mountains. Hearing Qianling's words, Xiao Chen also smiled and replied. Ever since I knew that you were a disciple of the Eastern Sword Pavilion, I knew that the hidden dragon of the Eastern Sword Pavilion had finally appeared. Come, I've wanted to fight you since we were in the Thousand Monster Mountain range, said Qianling. After he finished speaking, he took out his own profound weapon, a silver-white long blade. There was a surge of fighting spirit from his body. At the same time, the blade chi that had reached the level of small success slowly appeared and surrounded Qianling. They met in the Demon's Mountains and trained together for 5 months. During this period, the two of them experienced countless dangers together and killed second-class and even third-class monsters together. In these countless dangers, not only did the two of them form a deep friendship, but they also witnessed each other's terrifying talents. Heroes appreciated each other. Under the premise of becoming friends, the two of them wanted to fight with each other. Because only the other party could possibly be worthy of their full strength under the circumstances of being in the same realm. Feeling Qianling's blade chi and fighting spirit, Xiao Chen also smiled slightly. Then, the storage ring on his hand flashed and the Qingyun sword instantly appeared in his hand. The blade chi gushed out and the fighting spirit also soared to the sky. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. Since I was young, no one in the same realm was worthy of my full strength. Looking at Qianling, Xiao Chen said lightly. Me too, but my cultivation is 1 level higher than yours. I'll suppress it to the completion of the Yellow Realm. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qianling replied and took the initiative to suppress his cultivation from the completion of the Yellow Realm to the completion of the Yellow Realm. Seeing that Qianling had actually taken the initiative to suppress his cultivation, Mu Qing, who was on the viewing platform, sneered. Idiot, you actually still talk about fairness. Mu Qing felt that Qianling's actions were foolish. However, after hearing his words, Zhao Weiyun indifferently spoke. This is the reason why you're still inferior to the 3 of us. This isn't stupidity, but the confidence and pride of a hidden dragon. Fighting beyond our level is as easy as eating and drinking for us, not to mention having a higher cultivation base than our opponents. If we were to use our cultivation base to suppress our opponents, it would be an insult to us. Humph, Mu Qing was speechless when faced with Zhao Weiyun's refutation. He could only coldly snort. He felt that Qianling suppressing his cultivation base was a foolish action, but Zhao Weiyun and Lin Xing thought otherwise. Qianling's action represented his pride as one of the 5 great hidden dragons. After suppressing his cultivation to the same level as Xiao Chen, Qianling took the initiative to attack. Be careful. As soon as he finished speaking, Qianling's feet moved. He displayed an upper-class body movement technique that had reached the transformative realm. His entire body charged towards Xiao Chen like a flash of lightning. Facing Qianling's attack, Xiao Chen didn't have any intention of retreating. He displayed the 7-star steps and directly met Qianling's attack. Both of their body movement techniques had reached the transformative realm. Their bodies floated and their speed was extremely fast. Even ordinary inner disciples couldn't compare to this speed. Furthermore, both of them had only cultivated upper-class martial skills. If they were to cultivate profound martial skills, it would be hard to imagine how fast their speed would be. The battle stage was filled with the afterimages of both of them. The sound of swords and sabers clashing constantly resounded. At the same time, upper-class martial skills that had reached the transformative realm were constantly being displayed by both of them. One of them was a sword cultivator, while the other was a saber cultivator. Both of them walked on different paths, but no matter if it was the way of the saber or the way of the sword, both of them had already reached an extremely terrifying level. I counted. From the start of the battle until now, they have already displayed 10 upper-class martial skills that have reached the transformative realm. A Fire Cloud sect disciple who followed Zhao Wuyan said with a face full of shock as he watched the two of them fiercely fighting. In a short span of 100 breaths, the two of them had already fiercely fought over 100 moves. At the same time, both of them had already displayed 10 upper-class martial skills that had reached the transformative realm. It was already rare for an ordinary warrior of the Yellow Realm to be able to cultivate one upper-class martial skill to the transformative realm. But to be able to cultivate 2 upper-class martial skills to the transformative realm was already considered a top genius. Just like Wang Hu, who was once the #1 person in the outer sect of the Eastern Sword Pavilion, he had also cultivated 2 upper-class martial skills to the transformative realm. Hearing the Fire Cloud sect disciples' astonishment, Zhao Wuyan said calmly. Wuming, actually, the 4 of us, including Xiaochen, could have already cultivated profound martial skills. But do you know why we haven't cultivated profound martial skills until now? The disciple who exclaimed was called Zhao Wuming. He was Zhao Wuyan's younger brother. When he heard his brother's words, Zhao Wuming said doubtfully, I don't know, it's very simple. Our vision is not limited to what's in front of us, but to the peak of martial arts. The foundation is very important to us. Before cultivating profound martial skills, we must have a good foundation. This is also the reason why we haven't cultivated profound martial skills until now. Facing Zhao Wuming's doubt, Zhao Wuyan said indifferently. Cultivating foundational martial skills was all for the foundation. Moreover, it was not only for now. Even if they started cultivating profound martial skills in the future, Xiaochen and the other 4 would still cultivate foundational martial skills. Because the more foundational martial skills they grasped, the more helpful it would be for them in the future. Facing Zhao Wuyan's explanation, Zhao Wuming nodded his head as if he understood. And just as the two of them were talking, the battle on the stage had already reached its climax. Sword Qi and Blade Qi collided. Sword Qi and Blade Qi collided. Although until now, Xiaochen and Qinling had not used their trump cards, this kind of battle was already dazzling. To be honest, even inner court disciples would find it hard to erupt with such an intense battle. Not only was their speed fast, every move of the two could be said to be perfect. It was impossible to guard against. As long as there was the slightest mistake, it would be possible to be heavily injured. There was no room for the slightest distraction. And under such an intense battle, the two of them were evenly matched. Looking at Xiaochen, who was evenly matched with Qinling, this scene was even more exciting than when Xiaochen killed the poisonous dragon prince. Because Qinling was a hidden dragon, in the entire East Sword Pavilion, not to mention disciples of the same realm, even some inner court disciples would not be Qinling's opponent. And all along, the East Sword Pavilion had been troubled by the fact that there was no one in the same realm that could contend against the 4 hidden dragons. But today, in the same realm, Xiaochen was able to contend against Qinling. In Qinling's hands, there was not a trace of weakness. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 45. At the same level, the East Sword Pavilion finally had someone who could contend against the 4 hidden dragons. Looking at the fierce battle between Xiaochen and Qinling, the East Sword Pavilion's side felt their blood boiling, while the Blood Demon Palace's side had ugly expressions. They originally thought that Qinling's victory was in the bag, but now it seemed that because of Xiaochen's appearance, it was too early to say who would win this battle because Xiaochen was not afraid of Qinling at all. Of course, if Qinling did not suppress his cultivation, he might be able to defeat Xiaochen. However, Qinling would not do so because he did not want to use cultivation suppression to win. After a few hundred moves, neither side had the upper hand. In the fierce battle, the two of them retreated at the same time as if they had discussed beforehand, pulling apart the distance between them. Their eyes met and they looked at Xiaochen. Qinling said with a smile. If this continues, even if we fight for another day and night, I'm afraid it will be difficult to determine the winner. Xiaochen, let's decide the winner. Up until now, both of them were still holding back. After hearing Qinling's suggestion, Xiaochen's face revealed a smile. Sure, with both of them holding back, it was indeed difficult to determine the winner. Only by using all of their trump cards would it be possible to determine the winner. Hearing Xiaochen's answer, Qinling smiled faintly and nodded. Then, the sword aura around his body suddenly surged. The sword aura that was originally at the small mastery stage actually rose to the great mastery stage. Sword aura at the great mastery stage at the age of 19, this. Sensing that Qinling's sword aura had reached the great mastery stage, an inner disciple of the East Sword Pavilion exclaimed in shock. How is this possible? Qinling was only 19 years old, how could he cultivate sword aura to the great mastery stage? Even among the inner disciples of the East Sword Pavilion, there were less than 20 people who could cultivate sword aura to the great mastery stage. Such talent could no longer be described as terrifying. After the shock, the people of the East Sword Pavilion looked at Xiaochen, their eyes were filled with seriousness and expectation. Blade Qi at the large success stage was not something that could be compared to at the small success stage. Now that Qinling had revealed his trump card, how was Xiaochen going to deal with such a trump card? In other words, had Xiaochen's sword Qi reached the profound realm? Everyone had expectant looks on their faces. However, on second thought, could Xiaochen's sword Qi possibly reach the great accomplishment stage? One had to know that Xiaochen's sword aura was only in the entry stage a year ago. It was almost impossible for him to break through 2 stages consecutively within a year. He was worried that Xiaochen would not be able to block Qinling's blade Qi. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the sword Qi around Xiaochen's body began to rise abruptly, charging towards the realm of greater mastery. I knew that your blade aura wasn't at the initial stage. Fortunately, I made a breakthrough in the past 2 days. Xiaochen chuckled as her blade aura surged. As soon as she finished her sentence, Xiaochen's sword Qi also surged to the great accomplishment stage. Sword Qi that had reached the great accomplishment stage. Sensing this, everyone from the East Sword Pavilion sucked in a breath of cold air. The astonishment in their hearts could no longer be described with words. Perhaps this was the difference between a hidden dragon and an ordinary genius. At the age of 19, they had already comprehended the blade Qi and sword Qi at the great accomplishment stage. Unlike Qinling's blade Qi, Xiaochen's sword Qi had only broken through in the past 2 days and could only be considered to be at the initial stage. However, even so, Xiaochen already had the strength to battle. Even though it was inferior to Qinling's blade Qi, it was still limited. The 5th hidden dragon has really appeared. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, Xiaochen has already proven his potential. Seeing that both of them had revealed their trump cards on the stage, Zhao Wuyun's eyes flickered with a faint fighting spirit as he spoke. Along with Zhao Wuyun's words, both of them moved at the same time. The final battle was about to begin. Without holding back, the great accomplishment blade Qi and sword Qi fiercely collided. Under the enhancement of the great accomplishment blade Qi and sword Qi, the power of the high-grade martial skills displayed by both of them was no weaker than a low-grade profound martial skill. The speed of their attacks was faster and the angle of their attacks was more tricky. At this moment, both of them didn't hold back at all. At the same time, Xiaochen still didn't show any signs of fatigue in front of Qinling. Seeing that the final victor was about to be decided, Sang Xian's face was filled with gratification. He turned to the second hall master of the Blood Demon Hall and said with a smile, "It seems that it won't be easy for your Blood Demon Hall's hidden dragon to suppress my East Sword Pavilion's hidden dragon today." Sang Xian, don't be happy too early. Hearing Sang Xian's words, the second hall master of the Blood Demon Hall coldly snorted. To be honest, the second hall master of the Blood Demon Hall was indeed unhappy in his heart. Originally, it should have been an easy battle. However, it had now turned into such a situation. And all of this was because of Xiao Chen's sudden appearance. If it wasn't for Xiao Chen, who in the East Sword Pavilion would be able to fight against Qianling on the same level? Even if a core disciple of the East Sword Pavilion came and suppressed his cultivation to the same level as Qianling, the second hall master of the Blood Demon Hall had absolute confidence that Qianling would win. The result had already become complicated and confusing. Before the final result of the battle between hidden dragons was out, no one dared to jump to conclusions. No one spoke again. Everyone was seriously watching the battle on the stage. Under the crowd's attentive gazes, Xiao Chen and Qianling had finally reached the final stage of the battle. Blade aura and sword aura revolved around the blade and sword respectively. As the blade and sword clashed, both of them were looking for an opportunity. As long as there was the slightest mistake, it would be very likely for the opponent to seize the opportunity and lose everything. In the fierce battle, Qianling finally caught Xiao Chen's small mistake. The long blade in his hand suddenly slashed downwards, aiming directly at Xiao Chen's left shoulder. "Xiao Chen, you're too careless." In that instant, an extremely small opening appeared on Xiao Chen's left shoulder. Such an opening might not be considered an opening in the eyes of others, but in Qianling's eyes, it was an opportunity for victory. In the Hidden Dragon battle, victory and defeat were decided with a single thought. After successfully catching Xiao Chen's opening, Qianling did not hold back at all and immediately launched an attack. His target was Xiao Chen's left shoulder. Seeing Qianling's blade slashing downwards, the crowd on the viewing platform had different expressions. Could it be that the outcome was already decided? "Is it over?" An elder of the East Sword Pavilion softly muttered with an unwilling expression. As a Heaven Tier expert, he was very clear that now that Qianling had caught such an opening, it would be very difficult for Xiao Chen to make a comeback. This was because the difference in strength between the two of them was not that great. Everyone felt that Xiao Chen had already lost. However, at this moment, Xiao Chen, who was fighting against Qianling, suddenly revealed a smile on his face. Ignoring Qianling's blade, he abruptly stabbed out with the sword in his hand, the tip of the sword pointing directly at Qianling's heart. "Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 46. Everyone thought that Xiao Chen was about to lose, but at this moment, Xiao Chen suddenly stabbed out with his sword, instantly reversing the situation. It was an exquisite sword strike. It was this sword strike that allowed him, who was already in a losing situation, to completely reverse the situation. Looking at Xiao Chen's sword, the elder of the East Sword Pavilion, who had been sighing unwillingly earlier, suddenly changed his expression. His eyes were filled with disbelief. No one would have thought that Xiao Chen would be able to stab out with his sword in such a situation. Even Song Xian and the other big shots of the older generation were full of praise for Xiao Chen's sword strike. "Qianling, it's not that I'm careless, but you're too impatient." Xiao Chen laughed softly as he stabbed out with his sword. The opening in his left shoulder was something that Xiao Chen had purposely done for Qianling, and Qianling had indeed fallen for it. Now that the two of them had attacked one after the other, the result was not difficult to determine. Qianling's target was Xiao Chen's left shoulder, while Xiao Chen's target was Qianling's heart. As such, the final result could only be that Xiao Chen would be seriously injured, while Qianling would fall. Exchanging injury for life, the result was already very obvious. Qianling was one step behind and lost this match. Both of them stopped at the same time. They were very clear about the final result. The blade was only an inch away from Xiao Chen's shoulder, while the sword was also only an inch away from Qianling's heart. If the swords in their hands moved forward by even a little bit, it would be enough to hit each other. Maintaining this position, Qianling looked bitterly at Xiao Chen, then took the initiative to sheath his sword and shook his head helplessly. "I fell into your trap, it's you who was too impatient." Hearing Qianling's words, Xiao Chen put away the Qingyun sword and replied with a smile. "Sigh, I should have known. How could a person like you reveal any flaws in front of your opponent? I've lost this battle and I'm sincerely convinced." Qianling didn't try to defend himself. A loss was a loss, and this was something that he, Chen Ling, could still accept. Not arrogant in victory, not discouraged in defeat. This was the state of mind that a hidden dragon should have. If he couldn't even accept a defeat, then he didn't deserve the title of hidden dragon. The outcome of the battle had been decided. After that, the two of them walked down from the martial arts stage. Facing such an outcome, the people of the Eastern Sword Pavilion felt as if they were in a dream. Who would have thought that the battle that they were certain to lose would actually be won? In the same realm, Xiaochen had defeated the Blood Devil Hall's hidden dragon Chen Ling. This was something that the Eastern Sword Pavilion didn't even dare to imagine. Everyone's gaze towards Xiaochen had changed. If it was said that there were still people who doubted Xiaochen's potential as a hidden dragon, then now, Xiaochen had undoubtedly used this victory to prove his identity as a hidden dragon. To be able to defeat Chen Ling in the same realm, even though it was a narrow victory, it still couldn't cover Xiaochen's brilliance. If Xiaochen wasn't worthy of being a hidden dragon, then who else was? He walked slowly towards Zhangxian, bowed to him, and said with a smile, "Master, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Hearing these words, Zhangxian looked at Xiaochen with incomparable gratification and nodded repeatedly. Good, very good. Zhangxian didn't know how to express his feelings anymore and could only nod repeatedly. The Eastern Sword Pavilion had obtained victory in the first battle, which was extremely advantageous for the next two battles. Compared to the Eastern Sword Pavilion's side, the remaining two disciples of the Blood Devil Hall were under immense pressure because as long as they lost another battle, it would mean that they had failed in this battle for the Spirit Vein. The second battle was between Qi Yan and an inner disciple of the Blood Devil Hall. Both of their cultivations were at the Mythic and perfect stage. As soon as the battle began, both of them were evenly matched. On the Blood Devil Hall's side, there was also a female disciple named Hongting. Moreover, she seemed to be very familiar with Qi Yan. Of course, there wasn't much difference in their ages and they had always been competitors, so they were extremely familiar with each other. Is there a need to work so hard? Even if you defeat me, you still have no chance of winning the next battle. This time, it's my senior brother who's taking part. As for your Blood Devil Hall side, Bloodhand isn't here. In the midst of the fierce battle, Qi Yan sneered. The Bloodhand that Qi Yan mentioned was the #1 core disciple of the Blood Devil Hall. Since Bloodhand wasn't here today, the core disciple representing the Blood Devil Hall obviously wouldn't be a match for Qin Heng because Qin Heng's strength was comparable to Bloodhand. Hearing Qi Yan's words, Hong Ting's face turned ugly. Bitch, stop talking nonsense. I don't care about the others. I just want to win against you, slutty fox. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Hearing Hong Ting's words, Qi Yan was instantly enraged and the battle between the two became even more intense. As the saying goes, if there was a grudge between women, it wouldn't be any weaker than a man's. Just like Qi Yan and Hong Ting right now, both of them seemed to be fighting to the death as if they had a vendetta against each other. An intense battle broke out, and in the end, both women suffered heavy injuries. It could be seen that the strength of the two women was very close, and it was basically impossible to determine the winner. Moreover, their battle was not like Xiaochen and Chen Ling, who were completely fighting to the death. Crazy women were the most terrifying. Xiaochen had long experienced this. Looking at Qi Yan and Hong Ting on the stage, Xiaochen said with a bitter smile, "Master, why don't we consider it a draw? If this continues, there will definitely be no result." He suggested to Zhangxian to stop the battle. If this continued, the two women would be crippled even if they didn't die. Hearing Xiaochen's words, Zhangxian looked at the Blood Devil Hall's second hall master. Seeing this, the second hall master exhorted for a moment before nodding gloomily. Although Qi Yan and Hong Ting didn't have the talent of a hidden dragon, they were still rare top geniuses. Neither the Blood Devil Hall nor the East Sword Pavilion could afford to lose them. Therefore, unless there was no other choice, Zhangxian and the second hall master naturally couldn't watch the two women die here. After reaching a consensus, Zhangxian and the second hall master took action at the same time and forcefully separated the two women who had already gone crazy. Although they were stopped by their respective masters, the two women still had no intention of stopping. No one was at a disadvantage and they opened their mouths to curse at each other. "Bitch, come again if you dare, come on, you slutty fox. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" They had almost lost their minds. Looking at the two women's appearance, Xiaochen and Qinling smiled helplessly. Among them, Xiaochen didn't know about the conflict between Qian and Hongting, but Qinling was very clear about it. The two women entered the Blood Devil Hall and the East Sword Pavilion in the same year. Moreover, it was said that their families were in the same city. It could be said that the two women were competitors since young. No matter if it was for their families or for themselves, as long as the two women met, they would definitely fight to the death. In Qinling's opinion, after fighting for so many years, perhaps even the two women didn't know why they were fighting. It had almost become an instinct. Please collect, recommend, reward. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.